today because of industrial action. Northern and Transpennine Express services aren't running. There's a reduced service on a number of other routes, and LNER have a limited service running on the East Coast Main Line into and out of King's Cross Station in London. And on the M25 in Kent, there are long anti-clockwise delays towards the Dartford tunnels after a lorry broke down earlier. Queues back beyond Junction 3, halfway back to Junction 4 at Orpington. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, a woman who 25 years ago, at the age of just 14, tortured and killed her 71-year-old grandmother was last month released from prison on licence.
But this isn't the first time she's been let out. Sarah Davey has been bailed and reincarcerated no less than 7 times. Well, to debate this, we're joined by former Detective Chief Inspector Colin Sutton, famed for catching the notorious killer of Millie Dowler, Levi Belfield, and GB News' own Patrick Christie's.
I think we have to qualify that where the killer is a child, and we have to accept that to consign somebody to be in prison for 60, 70 or 80 years is probably something that we ought to think twice about. So I understand why this happens. I understand the outrage. I really understand the outrage. I think that 14-year-olds who kill should be given a chance to rehabilitate? Yes, I do. Do I think that somebody who's had 7 such chances and blown them away deserves an 8th chance? Then probably I think that's a lot more doubtful.
I would have thought that by chance, sort of 3 or 4, they'd have got the picture, but clearly not. Patrick, what do you make of it all?
Well, some people are born evil, aren't they? And why should we have to suffer to have them back out on the streets? There are some crimes that are so serious that you should pay for it either with your life or for the rest of your life. This was a sadistic murder, the details of which absolutely cannot be read out on air at this particular time of day. There are 3 issues here. Is this justice for the families of victims? I just think a release like this is a slap in the face, really, to us all. It's another example of soft justice. And just because she's a child, well, she was old enough to commit the heinous crime she committed.
Morning, 9:30 on Thursday, the 9th of May. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Andrew Beers, and Nana Rukoya.
Well, an own goal for Labour. Sir Keir Starmer is met with backlash from the left-wing faction of his party after accepting defecting Tory MP Natalie Elphicke. Here she is.
Under Keir Starmer, Labour have changed. And I think that change is going to bring a much better future for our country. And that's why I was so keen to join the Labour Party and play my part in bringing that important future forward.
Astonishing. The former Chancellor and Education Secretary Nadim Zahawi is going to stand down in the next election. He's the 64th Tory MP to say they're going.
Well, protect Jewish students. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak urges universities to take a zero-tolerance approach to anti-Semitism.
And critical medicine shortages, maybe it's affecting you. Pharmacists in England warning drug stocks are so low in England that patients are at an immediate risk of harm. We'll find out why.
And the boss of the pub chain Wetherspoons says that Guinness is now a fashionable drink. And in his words, not just for old blokes like him. Tim Martin, yes, he joins us later.
Do you like Guinness?
Do you know, I think it looks good.
Yeah.
It looks good. It tastes like iron filings. You know what I mean? It's supposed to be full of iron and it tastes like it. Do you know what I mean?
I did drink it when I was in Ireland because I thought I had to.
Yeah.
I only had 1.
Yeah, I think you could mix it with something else.
Yeah.
Is that snake bite and black, or was that something else?
Something like that.
Something else.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we'd love to hear what you think. As ever, send your views and post your comments using gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's your latest news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you very much. Good to see you and good morning. These are the top stories from the GB Newsroom. The Bank of England is expected to leave its base interest rate unchanged at 5.25% for a sixth time as economists wait for inflation to come under control. The decision, to be announced today, comes as inflation remains at 3.2%, above the bank's 2% target. It would mean a longer period of higher borrowing costs, which have squeezed households since interest rates started rising at the end of 2021. Both major political parties have made economic growth a key part of their campaign pledges, with Rishi Sunak promising this year would see the economy bouncing back. Former Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi has announced he'll step down as an MP at the next election. In a statement posted to social media, Mr Zahawi said his mistakes were his own, but it had been his greatest honour to serve his constituents. He's been MP for Stratford-on-Avon for 14 years, but he was sacked as Tory party chairman in January last year after an inquiry found he'd failed to disclose that HMRC was investigating his tax affairs. And commuters are facing a third consecutive day of disruption as the rail industry's longest ever strike action continues. Members of ASLEF at LNER, TransPennine Express and Northern Trains are walking out today, with none of the train companies using new laws aimed at ensuring minimum service levels during strikes. ASLEF's dispute has been running for 2 years and it hasn't met the Rail Delivery Group for fresh talks in over a year. The union claims its members haven't had a pay rise in 5 years and is accusing the government of giving up trying to resolve the issue. But the government says drivers have been offered salaries of up to £65,000, almost twice the UK average. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Andrew and Nana.
Well, hello and welcome to Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pierce. And what a joy, Nana Aquia. How nice.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me, Andrew.
Very good. So, now we're going to talk about what we both regard is a huge own goal by the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer. He thought he was being so clever by welcoming the Dover MP, Natalie Elphicke, as a defector.
And, of course, after he announced that Natalie Elphicke this decision to defect to the opposition 2 minutes before Prime Minister's questions yesterday, you may have seen it, lots of Labour MPs have said that Starmer's wrongly welcomed an MP that has called for a crackdown on immigration and openly supported the Rwanda scheme.
She certainly does. Well, joins in the studio is the political editor of the Daily Express, Sam Lister, and the barrister, Sam Pearce. Sam, you've written about her in the Express today. I've written about her in the Mail. I mean, I've reminded people that when she criticised Marcus Rashford, the footballer who missed the penalty, she said, perhaps if you spent more time on football, not time campaigning on school meals for poor kids, you wouldn't be such a bad footballer. There was a huge backlash against her, and Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, who will be our first woman Chancellor of Labour in the election, actually said, quote-unquote, Natalie, F off.
Yeah. I mean, we've got a whole page of all the many things she said that have been controversial over the recent years. And also, it's not even just about being controversial, is it? Nobody believes that this woman has shifted her positions from the very right of the party to become left-wing. I mean, you know, it's political cross-dressing, isn't it? Yeah. And it just doesn't wash. And I think, absolutely, people can defect to other parties. I don't particularly think that is a good thing to do. No. But, you know, I can see that if you and your party are in very different places, fine. But everybody expected this woman to defect to Reform. Nobody's buying the fact that she's defected to Labour. It just does not wash. And it's absolutely grubby. It's a grubby little deal. Yeah. It reflects badly on her, it reflects badly on Keir Starmer, and nobody in Westminster thinks that this is a genuine meeting of minds.
What do you think, Nana?
I just think that she's... I mean, after some of the things she said, and brilliant piece, by the way, Andrew, I must say, in the Daily Mail, that after a lot of the things that she's done, I mean, she's said so many things. She stood by her husband, didn't she? Yeah. And then after a little while, then she decided that she wasn't going to stand by him.
After being convicted of sexual assault against young women?
Yeah, she said it because he's attractive and attracted to other women. So she seems to be circumnavigating a lot of, you know, anything that is reasonable. Yeah. So to be part of the Labour Party, I don't know why Keir Starmer would take that aboard. She should, if anything, and that's not an insult to Reform, her views are nearer those of Reform than Keir Starmer.
Yeah, they certainly are.
Well, for me, I don't think she should be an MP at all, actually, because not only did she defend her husband after a jury had convicted him, and
the judge, Sam, just to interrupt, said he was told a pack of lies and he was a predator.
Absolutely. But she then, with a number of other MPs, went ahead and wrote to a senior judge in an attempt to influence the judge in the sentencing hearing. And that, for me, trying to influence a judge for either your own personal gain or someone else's personal gain, that should disqualify you from being an MP at all, as far as I'm concerned, Labour, Conservative, whatever. But I think the bigger problem for Keir Starmer, it goes beyond just this one particular defection. It's that Keir Starmer in this election, he's not just running against Rishi Sunak, he's running against the sofa. He's running against people staying at home. And I think a lot of Labour voters will be looking and saying, well, if this is the sort of person that is in the Labour Party, I might not vote for the Conservative Party, but am I really going to be bothered to get up off the sofa and go and vote for the Labour Party in this election if they don't seem to represent my values anymore?
Yeah, and her position on Rwanda in particular, she's probably the most ardent advocate of Rishi Sunak's let's ship illegal migrants to Rwanda in the Commons, and yet Labour will repeal that bill even if it's seen to be working.
When this was announced yesterday, my phone started pinging with MPs from the very right of the party who were saying she's more right-wing than me.
Yeah, exactly.
And they could not believe this. And one told me, Paul Bristow, he said, she's got views that would make Nigel Farage blush. I mean, this is not a woman who is moderate on immigration. No. She is the most hardline. She wrote a piece for me last year where she called Keir Starmer Sir Softy.
I saw it.
And said that he cannot be trusted on immigration.
Yeah.
So how can anyone believe she has gone from somebody who absolutely is foursquare behind the Rwanda policy, is absolutely hardline on turning around the small boats crisis, on dealing with both legal and illegal immigration, and being incredibly hardline on that? How can she then join Keir Starmer's Labour Party when he said he will ditch the Rwanda policy even if it works?
She said she put out a thing last year, an image of Keir Starmer next to an open door with the welcome sign on the door on the beach at Dover, her constituency, saying, this is his policy about let them all in. He's in bed with the people smugglers. That's what she said.
It's not just
and that's her leader.
But it's also her constituents that aren't happy with this either, because they voted thinking that they had an MP who was 100% behind the situation that is happening on their doorstep, or what was called an invasion, which I would agree with, on their doorstep. They're not happy either.
No, and I think it should be a rule. Anyone that, if you change parties, I think you should stand for re-election in a by-election. Not necessarily something wrong with changing parties. Churchill did it twice, but I think it's only fair on constituents to give them a shout. However, what I'm really struggling to understand, right? Natalie Elphicke doesn't herself seem to understand what the Labour Party is actually proposing. She put out a leaflet in the last week. It's in the Times today. An election leaflet in the last week with a bunch of claims about the Labour Party. One saying, the Labour Party will promising unfunded spending. Well, say what you want about the Labour Party, but they haven't actually promised any unfunded spending. She says they're promising higher taxes. Again, they haven't actually promised higher taxes. So has she just walked into the Labour Party thinking, unfunded spending and higher taxes, that sounds fantastic, I'm on board with that now? Or was she being dishonest in that leaflet? Is she being dishonest now?
She's just trying to keep her position because she knows that the Tory party are toast at the next election, and I think she wants some sort of period or something. She wants to remain relevant, but lots of them are disappearing. Nadeem Zahawi, he has now announced that he won't be continuing. He will stand down after the next general election.
Yeah, you've got huge numbers of people retiring, and to an extent that's
64 now.
64, and it's going up.
Rats sinking ships springs to mind.
Not quite as many as in 1997 yet, but certainly a lot.
Well, there's still time to go, Sam.
But you can understand that. You can understand why people are saying, look, I'm clearly not going to be in government after the next election, so let's try and do something else. But saying you're stepping down, I think, is so different from saying, I've completely changed my views and I'm switching to the other party. Again, if she wants to do that, fine. I don't have a principled objection for doing that. But what I want to see is some sort of reasoned explanation how she seems to have done a complete 180 in the past, 24 hours.
It was so extraordinary when she crossed the floor, literally, all very melodramatic, just for Prime Minister ask questions. You could see Labour MPs thinking, what's she doing? Where's she going? And none of them wanted her to sit next to them.
They don't want her.
They were sort of like this. It's like she was so toxic.
They're sat like this. They don't want to be next to her.
Don't.
And it's interesting because obviously all the comments she's made about her ex-husband goes down incredibly badly.
Sexually assaulted 3 women.
Yeah,
went to prison.
If you look around those Labour benches and the women on those Labour benches, they do not want Natalie Elphicke to be part of their gang. Now, I spoke to somebody yesterday, a Labour aide, and I said, she's going to be incredibly lonely over there. And they said what they'll do is they'll assign her a whip who will become her friend, you know, like almost to hold a hand around Parliament, so she won't be completely isolated. They'll make an effort to try and not make her isolated. But ultimately, push comes to shove, nobody in that party wants her there. She will be without friends politically, she will be cut adrift, and then she will kind of disappear without trace.
Well, she also voted, which I think will really upset the Labour women in particular, she voted to make abortion illegal in Northern Ireland. Yeah. That's not Labour Party policy. Labour Party many Labour MPs actually want to lower the age at which you can have an abortion. So she's so out of odds. So at odds with Labour on just about everything.
It does not wash. It is, as we've said today, it's a shameless betrayal because it is shameless on both sides.
Do you think Nana's right that there's a peerage in line being lined up for her?
Well, they denied it yesterday, but you know they would deny it, and you can see. They denied any kind of deal. They've denied offering her anything, apart from suggesting that she will become some kind of housing advisor to the party, unpaid. That actually, I think, sets her up nicely for a lucrative career in the public affairs world later on, where she can show she's connected to the top of the party and she could probably get a job in that respect. Or, you know, in a year's time when the fuss has died down, then do we see her in the House of Lords?
So the trouble is, this just increases cynicism about politics, Sam, I think.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And this goes back
to... be fair to Natalie, she's not here to defend herself. Not that she's given herself much. She's not helped herself out with... I mean, it's literally saying what she's said. The things she's said are indefensible in many ways.
She told the TV studios that she had her say yesterday.
And I'm actually not going to criticise Natalie particularly here. I'm going to sort of raise a wider problem with Labour. Because, again, I'm thinking about political problems for Labour, perhaps not in this election, but what about the next general election? It's all very well now to make your pitch, look, we can't be any worse than the current lot, which is essentially what Labour's pitch to the electorate is. But when you've been the current lot for 4 or 5 years, you've got to come up with something other than that. And every party loses part of their coalition in their second election in power. They need to secure their base. And what Labour haven't offered us, they've come up with some very good technical policies that we can talk about and criticise or defend, but they haven't come up with, this is the values that Labour stand for. This is what we want you to get sort of emotively on board with. And when you bring someone like Natalie Elphicke in, who certainly has very, very different values to, I would suggest, the vast majority of Labour voters, you really make it very difficult to understand that, and very, very difficult for voters to believe, for your base to believe, that at some point during the next 4 years, you're going to articulate that set of values to get excited about.
But the other side is, what does Keir Starmer stand for anyway? I mean, he has flip-flopped on so many different things. And I presume when it comes to Rwanda, as it appears to be having some sort of effect and seems to be working, he'll probably flip-flop on that.
Well, I certainly hope he doesn't flip-flop on Rwanda, because that's the thing the one thing I'm sort of most on board with him on at the moment. But I think it's legitimate at this point for an opposition to be developing policies, to be saying, right, this is the proposal. It hasn't worked. When the facts change, I change my mind, as John Maynard Keynes famously said. But I think what I'm worried about is more fundamental than that. It's not just a policy. It's the values. It's what we stand for, what we believe in our hearts.
You don't want him to flip-flop on Rwanda.
I really hope he doesn't.
So you want him to
He hates the
get rid of
Rwanda
Rwanda
policy.
I think
he hates it.
Why should he get rid of the Rwanda policy? What's wrong with Rwanda?
Well, what's wrong with Rwanda is a court that has looked into the facts in great detail.
Which are what?
Which are that Rwanda has failed to protect refugees in the past. It had a similar deal with Israel, and it didn't keep to it. And it's concluded that Rwanda is not a safe country. And I think when a court reviewing the facts has concluded that, politicians shouldn't depart from it.
And we are, with our refugees in tents all over the place. Some of them are held for 2 years and all sorts of things. People object to the Bibi Stockholm. There literally is nothing that we can do with these people, is there, that will be accepting of a sort of left-wing audience?
Well, there's loads of things that we can do with these people.
Send them back.
Yeah.
That's what we should
do.
do.
The first thing we should do is end the policy that prevents refugees from getting jobs, and so they can contribute to the economy.
Dublin's classed us as an unsafe country, so, you know, do you think we're an unsafe country, Sam?
Sorry, I missed that.
Dublin's classed us as an unsafe country. Do you think we're an unsafe country?
I think some of the things the way we're treating refugees is extremely problematic.
Are we unsafe?
I think we're still a safe country for refugees.
So
if a court,
the Dublin court's wrong.
I think the Dublin court is. I differ from the Dublin court on that.
Using the courts as your backup. Dublin courts have said that we're not safe.
But the British Supreme Court is the one that binds us.
The lesson of that, I think.
You're just picking courts now.
In Britain, we have to follow the law in Britain, which is the courts in Britain.
We're going to keep this. Coming up next, people living in a market town have been told, listen to this nonsense, they've got to pay £165 to complete a safety course so they can hang their award-winning floral lights on street lamps. Bureaucracy gone mad? You're not kidding. You're with Britain's Newsroom, the GB News.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Prince Harry, remember him? He appears to have fully turned his back on the UK as he listed his primary residence as the United States for the very first time in papers published yesterday. So interestingly, Harry listed the date on the formal US residency forms as the 29th of June 2023, last year. So that was the very same day he was kicked out of Frogmore Cottage in Great Windsor Park by his dad, the King. Charlotte, thank you for joining me. Okay. Are we just putting two and two together here with the significance of this date? Because there were stories during the rounds today that Harry chose that date specifically because he was so hurt about being booted out of Frogmore by his dad.
Yeah, I mean, to me it feels like he's trolling his dad a bit, because he could have said that he's been a US resident since 2020 when he quit the UK and moved to the States, but instead he chose the exact day that his dad kicked him out of Frogmore. But the reason his dad kicked him out of Frogmore was because he'd slagged off Camilla in Spare. And, you know, and his dad, apparently it was a really difficult decision for Charles, because, of course, no dad wants to kick their son out of their home. But he went beyond the pale. So Charles took the difficult decision to say, look, Frogmore's been empty for years anyway. We've spent £2.4 million doing it up for you. And now you've, you know, insulted our family in your book, Spare. Why is he so hung up on Frogmore? Because this is the country he was desperate to get away from. This is a house he didn't particularly want to live in and, in fact, didn't live in.
Well, he was forced, by the way, to pay £2.5 million to fund the renovations after it all kicked off. I mean, would that have anything to do with...
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that sort of galvanised his anger towards the whole situation. He thought he was getting a fantastic freebie. And there was, you know, there were a few reports at the time that Meghan actually thought she was moving into Frogmore House, which is a much grander property. And she sort of felt a bit sort of tricked or confused and hadn't quite realised it was actually a cottage, which is only a mere, I think it was only a mere 8 bedrooms.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good morning and welcome to Britain's Newsroom with me, Nana Akwe, and the brilliant Andrew Pearce.
The brilliant Nana Akwe. Now, we're talking about this extraordinary story. A floral display group has been told by their local council they've got to take part in a £165 safety course to hang their baskets on streetlights.
Now, Chatteris in Bloom, which was founded in 2005, won Anglia in Bloom's highest gold award 4 times between 2017 and 2022.
Well, Susan Unwin is the president of Chatteris in Blue, and Anne Wells is the deputy chairman of it, and they join us now. Ladies, morning to you. What is this woke madness about?
Can I just correct you? Anne is the chair. I'm just the president.
Okay.
It's basically, obviously we have a public liability, and normally we just get a licence from county council, not our local council, county council to put them on, use their lampposts. But now this year, there's some jobs worth in Cambridge that's decided that we've now got to go on a health and safety course. And I don't know where you've got the 165 figure from. It's actually £300, and it's a 2-day course. It's a 2-day course that's not very local to us. At the end of the day, we are volunteers, and all we want to do is plant.
And what health and safety are they going to teach you? What are you going to learn on this ridiculous course, 2-day course for £300 odd?
Well, we have no idea because we haven't gone down that road. To be honest, what has normally happened? What has normally happened is we work very closely with the Chatteris Christmas lights. And and one of their volunteers used to fill in their licence at the same time as ours and put them in together. And then, so obviously this has been going on since just before Christmas. So when I heard it, because I'm a town councillor, when I first heard it at the town council, I thought, oh well, if they're having that problem, we're going to have that problem as well. And of course, it was becoming so difficult, and we've seen some of the correspondence that's gone on between the Christmas lights and the county council, that we just haven't got enough people to go on this course. All we want to do, we're all full-timers, we've all got family commitments, work commitments. We just want to do planting and everything in our own, without getting bogged down with all this red tape.
I mean, the town council have been so supportive of us. It's the county council we're coming up against a brick wall again with.
Well, it just seems absurd that should be. There's nothing particularly dangerous about you hanging these plants and things. What's the danger?
Well, the point is, for 20 years we've been doing this. 20 years we've been putting them up. And we've now had no accidents. It's not been at the detriment of our community. I mean, if we have to involve contractors, which is sort of how it's heading, because that is what Christmas lights are going to have to do, you're talking thousands. And they're going to close roads.
Susan and Anne, it's been a pleasure. We're running out of time, but thank you to you both. Well, a Cambridgeshire County Council spokesperson said it's great seeing the creative ways these communities across the country make use of street lamps with festive displays.
As streetlights are directly connected to local power grid, to ensure everyone's safety, any group wishing to display items from a streetlight need to get in touch with the council. We can make sure essential independent safety is completed. Ridiculous, that council,
absurd.
A Lib Dem council, and it's ridiculous because those ladies have been doing it for 20 years. £300?
Ridiculous.
I can't stand it.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There is a bit of mist and fog around first thing this morning, but otherwise it's going to be a fine day for many of us. Away from the far north-northwest, that is. Here there is quite a bit of cloud and there will be some outbreaks of drizzly rain through much of the day, but elsewhere across the bulk of the country, plenty of fine sunny weather around. Lots of blue skies, and in that sunshine it is going to feel pretty warm. Temperatures up a little bit compared to yesterday. There's a good chance that we're going to see highs of around 23, possibly 24 Celsius towards the southeast, and even further north, despite the slightly cloudier skies, temperatures getting into the high teens quite easily. Little change as we go through this evening and overnight, sticking with the thicker cloud and some drizzly rain across far northern parts and a few spots elsewhere across parts of Scotland. Otherwise, lots of areas having a dry and at times clear night, so once more we will see a few pockets of mist and fog developing. It won't be a particularly chilly start to the day tomorrow. Lots of places, particularly in the towns and cities, holding up in double figures. Again, any mist and fog patches will relatively quickly burn back as we go through tomorrow morning, and then once more another fine picture across the bulk of the country. Still a little bit of drizzly rain, perhaps for Orkney and Shetland, but really for many northern central parts of Scotland it's going to be drier and brighter than today. Again, temperatures climbing a little bit further, so for many it may even feel a bit warmer than today. Once more, I'll see you again soon.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Northumberland, the A695 remains closed in both directions between Corbridge and Riding Mill after a tractor caught fire yesterday. It's left a fuel spill. On Merseyside, the A580 East Lancs Road is closed in both directions west of junction 4 of the M57 at Knowsley after an accident with long delays as you divert. Now, there's disruption to some train services in England again today because of industrial action. Northern and Transpennine Express services aren't running at all. There's a reduced service on a number of other routes, and LNER are only running a limited service on some routes of the East Coast Main Line into and out of King's Cross Station in London. In Suffolk, the A14 is blocked westbound by an accident just before junction 40 at Higham, with queues from Bury St Edmunds. On the M25 in Kent, there are anti-clockwise queues towards the Dartford tunnels, halfway back to junction 4 at Orpington. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. But you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Thursday the 9th of May. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Nana Aquare, and Andrew Pearce.
Well, an own goal for Labour certainly seems like it. Sir Keir Starmer's had a huge backlash from some of his own MPs after accepting the defecting Tory MP, Natalie Elphicke. Olivia Utley has the latest.
Yes, the defection of Natalie Elphicke was certainly embarrassing for the Conservative Party, but it hasn't been plain sailing for Labour either. Find out more with me very soon.
And the former Chancellor and Education Secretary Nadeem Zahawi says that he won't stand at the next election. Another defection, another headache really for Rishi Sunak.
And protect Jewish students. That's the message from the Prime Minister, who's urging universities to take a zero-tolerance approach to those anti-Semitic demonstrations.
And critical medicine shortages. Pharmacists in England warn that drug stocks are so low in England that patients are at an immediate risk of harm. So if you had any trouble getting hold of your medication?
I have to take a statin.
Do you?
And,
cholesterol, isn't it? That's it.
Yeah, and about a month ago, they hadn't gotten my pharmacist. They just ran out, and so I guess this has been part of the problem.
But a lot of it, like, it was focused on England, though. So what are the others doing? That's the question.
Exactly.
They're not struggling with this as well.
I know. Well, we're going to talk to pharmacists about it. So, and we want to know if you're affected. Do let us know. You can send your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/you'll say. But first, the headlines with Tatiana.
Andrew, thank you very much. The top stories this morning. The Bank of England is expected to leave its base interest rate unchanged at 5.25% for a sixth time as economists wait for inflation to come under control. The decision, to be announced today, comes as inflation remains at 3.2% above the bank's 2% target. It would mean a longer period of higher borrowing costs, which have squeezed households since interest rates started rising at the end of 2021. Both major political parties have made economic growth a key part of their campaign pledges, with Rishi Sunak promising this year would see the economy bouncing back. Now to some breaking news. A large fire has broken out in Staffordshire with thick black smoke seen bellowing into the sky. If you're watching us on television, you can see these live pictures with that thick plume of black smoke rising into the sky. Emergency services are on the scene following reports of that fire at a factory in Cannock. Firefighters are asking all residents to close their windows and doors due to the fumes. Local businesses are being told to evacuate. Former Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi has announced he'll step down as an MP at the next election. He's been MP for Stratford-on-Avon for 14 years, but he was sacked as Tory party chairman in January last year after an inquiry found he'd failed to disclose that HMRC was investigating his tax affairs. In a statement posted to social media, Mr Zahawi said that his mistakes were his own, but it'd been his greatest honour to serve his constituents. Commuters are facing a third consecutive day of disruption as the rail industry's longest ever strike action continues. Members of ASLEF at LNER, TransPennine Express and Northern trains are walking out today, with none of the train companies using new laws aimed at ensuring minimum service levels during strikes. ASLEF's dispute has been running for 2 years and it hasn't met the Rail Delivery Group for fresh talks in over a year. The union claims its members haven't had a pay rise in 5 years and is accusing the government of giving up trying to resolve the issue. But the government says drivers have been offered salaries of up to £65,000, almost twice the UK average. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer is facing backlash from some members of his own party after former Tory MP Natalie Elphicke's defection. The MP for Dover announced her decision just moments before Prime Minister's questions yesterday. Former Shadow Minister for Domestic Violence, Jess Phillips, says Ms Elphicke should be held to account for her actions after she defended her former partner during his conviction for sexual assault. Well, Labour Party Chair Annalise Dodds told GB News leaving the Tories was Ms Elphicke's decision.
There was no transaction here, there was no promise of a peerage and so forth, absolutely not. This is a decision, as set out in her statement, that is very much rooted in her constituents' concerns. And obviously, Natalie Elphicke, as I mentioned before, she's not the first Conservative MP to have taken this decision. She's the third Conservative MP to have put her constituents first, their interests, their needs first, and recognised that they need and deserve change, that they're not going to be given that change from the Conservatives, and that it's only Labour that's got a plan to get Britain building again and actually give our country its future back.
Rishi Sunak has condemned what he's called extremists at the National Union of Students, who he says opposed a group of Jewish students' support for Israel. Ahead of a meeting today with Jewish charity the Community Security Trust, the Prime Minister has warned that students and academic staff are being targeted, threatened and assaulted simply for being Jewish. Mr Sunak is hosting a meeting at Downing Street with vice-chancellors from leading British universities for talks aimed at keeping Jewish students safe on campuses. And finally, experts are warning of a rise in the shortage of medicines, with more people forced into what's been called pharmacy bingo in a search for vital medications. A new poll has revealed that severe shortages have become a daily occurrence in many pharmacies across England. Health leaders say supply chain issues have worsened since 2021 and are calling on the government to launch an urgent review. A spokesperson for the Department for Health says supply issues aren't unique to Britain and most issues are managed with minimal impact on patients. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Andrew and Nana.
Thank you, Tatiana. It's fast approaching 7 minutes after 10 o'clock. This is the Britain's Newsroom. I'm Nana Aquia and the fabulous Andrew Pearce. Now, we'd all want to hear what you think, so send us your thoughts. You can get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. But lots of you have been getting in touch. James says this now. We earlier spoke about inflation in the previous hour. Inflation has been driven by external factors, high oil, electricity, gas prices, etc., and that we, or the UK in general, have no control over. The Bank of England increasing interest rates in the UK will make absolutely zero difference. All it does is punish already suffering people.
Yeah, and Andrew says voting Labour was a way for us to get rid of Natalie from our area, but now we won't be voting Labour. That's interesting. Because, of course, she had a 12,000 majority in Dover. She obviously thinks she was going to lose her seat, clearly. Yeah. Because looking at the polls, she would lose on a majority of that. But, by God, I've covered some defections in my time, Nana. I don't recall one which has backfired quite so spectacularly, quite so quickly.
Well, there's still time for Keir Starmer, not to make a complete hash of it, but obviously this isn't a good move. Wendy says, when are we going to get clarity on Labour's policies? Good question, I agree. Please, what does change mean? Labour are gaslighting the British public, thinking just repeating the same words of unclarified hope, then we will vote for them. It's insulting.
Yeah, and Steve says Labour Party is the home for strays and homeless MPs. This is not a political party. Well, you may think that, Steve, but they look to me like they're going to be forming the next government. Can't see any other outcome, can you?
I think so, unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it. Well, Labour leader Keir Starmer is facing a backlash from his party after Dover MP Natalie Elphicke announced that her decision to defect to the opposition 2 minutes before Prime Minister's questions yesterday.
Many Labour MPs have said openly that Starmer wrongly welcomed this MP. She's called for crackdowns on immigration, and she's a huge supporter of the scheme to deport legal migrants to Rwanda. So is this an own goal for Labour? Well, our political correspondent, Olivia Utley, joins us from Westminster. Olivia, morning to you. I thought what was really significant, as she walked across the floor, literally very melodramatically yesterday, to walk onto the Labour benches, you could see Labour MPs thinking, oh, where's she going? And I don't want to sit next to me. I mean, because she's not even a Marmite. Yeah. She's seen as toxic by a lot of Labour MPs.
Well, absolutely. And there's a great shot of the Labour MPs on either side of her sort of studiously turning their heads away from her when she comes and sits on the Labour benches. As you say, Andrew, I mean, normally when there is a defection, you get crowing from the benches to which the MP defected and wails of misery from the benches from which the MP left. This time, it almost seems to be the other way round. You've got Conservative MPs making jokes about just how right-wing Natalie Elphicke is. Are the Labour Party accepting members of the ERG now? How broad church is this Labour Party when you've got Zara Sultana and Natalie Elphicke sitting next to each other? Meanwhile, Labour MPs don't seem happy about this at all. Now, of course, one reason for that is Natalie Elphicke's politics. She is seen to be to the right of the Conservative Party. She's been a huge proponent of the Rwanda bill. If anything, it sounded as though she didn't think it went far enough. But also, of course, there was this huge controversy over her backing her husband, the former MP, Charlie Elphicke, when he was convicted for sexual offences. After that conviction, she said that the reason that he was being punished for being attracted and attractive to women. Now, that's not the sort of comment you expect to hear from any politician, let alone a female Labour politician. So I think it's not really surprising that quite a lot of Labour MPs, it sounds as though Jess Phillips is leading the charge, aren't happy about the newest member of their benches at all.
It seems to me, Olivia, that Keir Starmer took this decision with a small cabal of advisers. He didn't consult widely at all, which doesn't augur well for the future, does it? And even the chief whip, who's, as you know, is in charge of party discipline, has the pulse of the Parliamentary Labour Party, Alan Campbell, the chief whip, apparently wasn't even told in advance.
No, apparently there are only 6 people who were told about this defection beforehand, which doesn't particularly bode well for a future Labour government. It doesn't sound as though it's going to be particularly sort of collegiate. That said, I mean, you could argue that we're all looking at this from a very kind of Westminster bubble perspective. We're interested and concerned with the exact politics of Natalie Elphicke. If you are someone like the vast majority of the country who will just watch the headlines on the news once in an evening, then you know, the Conservative Party losing an MP to Labour is a bad look for the Conservatives and a good look for Labour. So it could be that Keir Starmer just wanted to seize on that political opportunity. And if it really is the case, as Labour MPs keep claiming, that, you know, Natalie Elphicke, won't be standing in the next general election, but also hasn't been offered anything in exchange for this, then it could be that, although it's slightly awkward for Keir Starmer in the short term, in the long term, this might turn out not to be very much of a problem at all. In 6 months' time, Natalie Elphicke might have left politics altogether.
But what was the point, though? It sort of seems like, what's the point? In my view, I look and I think, well, she doesn't want to stand after this. What is the point? What possible benefits, really, could there be for her to do that? Because I'm still trying to work out, people have talked about a peerage or something. What is the goal for this? Because I can't see any benefit for her.
Well, I mean, that does seem to be the head-scratcher, really. It was the same with Dan Poulter. Why did Dan Poulter defect, 5 months out from a general election, having said that he's not going to stand? Normally, the reason why MPs defect is either because they've completely ideologically drifted from their party, or more often because they know which side their bread's buttered, they know who's going to win the next general election, and they're scared of losing their seats. That isn't the case here. So, I mean, either we can conclude that Natalie Elphicke is genuinely being very principled, and I mean, there is an argument for that. In her resignation letter, she talks a lot about housing, about the Conservatives' failure to reform planning. And actually, looking back at her political history, she has been a big proponent of more house building. So you could argue that it is a simply ideological move. Or it could be that after the next election, perhaps she won't be offered a peerage. Annalise Dodds there was firmly denying that a peerage has been offered. But might she be being given some sort of role in a future Labour government, perhaps a housing czar or something along those lines? It feels as though there might be a little bit of opportunism to it, even if there is also some kind of ideological reasoning there.
If you look at her speeches and her contributions on social media, Olivia, she talks constantly about immigration, the small boats crossing the channel, which are the scourge of her constituents, because she is the MP for Dover. And at every opportunity, she has savaged the Labour Party's position but for opposing the Rwanda bill to get to deport migrants to Rwanda. Labour will repeal that legislation, even if it seemed to be working. So, which is why so many of us are thinking, how could she possibly have gone to a party which is so implacably opposed to what she wants to do about illegal migration?
Well, absolutely. And as you say, Andrew, she has very much been at the front line of the illegal immigration debate as the MP for Dover. This is something which really obviously impacts her constituents. And most of what she's talked about in Parliament, most of her work as an MP has been about illegal immigration. So even if she does care deeply about planning reform, it's not her main issue. So why has she turned her back on the Conservative Party, the party who have brought us the Rwanda scheme, which she seemed to be completely on board with, and gone over to the Labour Party? Labour's plan for reducing illegal migration is to employ 1,000 new immigration caseworkers in the House of Commons, which they're hoping, not in the Home Office, which they're hoping will speed up the process and stop that bottleneck. But it isn't exactly muscular. It's not the sort of policy that you would expect the MP for Dover to be supportive of. So we are all left a little bit scratching our heads about why she has chosen to move over to the Labour Party when her one big issue is illegal immigration.
Fascinating.
I don't think her constituents will be happy about that at all.
I'm sure they're not. Absolutely not. Olivia, thanks for talking to us. Olivia Utley, our political correspondent. We sent someone in the mail down to Dover to talk to people. They were absolutely outraged.
I could imagine.
And gobsmacked too. They said, but she wants the Rwanda bill and she wants to stop illegal migration, and what a Labour policy. But they also said the same thing, which she should force a by-election. There should be a by-election.
Yeah, another one. Yet another by-election, another one crossing the floor. I don't know. Well, listen, still to come. As Prince Harry, yes, Prince Harry.
Oh, is he leaving?
He's good.
Shame.
It is a shame, isn't it? Prince Harry flies home today. Should his dad have spared him just 5 minutes for a cup of tea, if it was that way round? You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Meghan's launched her new lifestyle range, starting with jams. It's called American Riviera Orchard. Apparently, it's been made from organic fruits grown in Meghan and Harry's Montecito gardens. If we can believe it, I reserve an air of scepticism. But she sent out 50 jars of this jam to influencers and celebrity friends in the hope of trying to boost some sales to her products. But it's ended up winning for King Charles because fans have gone to Highgrove website and King Charles's jam has sold out.
So hang on, why did they go?
Has gone through the roof.
Why did they go to the Highgrove website?
Well, I think it's a bit of a blow against Meghan because they're saying we don't want your jam. We're going to go and get the king. So it just shows how popular the king is. This is what she's always wanted. Her dream has been to be like this Gwyneth Paltrow style lifestyle guru. She's always loved Gwyneth's website Goop. When she set up the TIG, which was her website when she was still in Suits as a working actress, that was the brand, the style of brand that she was going for, was this Gwyneth style, New York elite, very princessy. So this is her chance now by trying to cash in on her royal title because she is now a duchess, so she's using that to try and elevate her brand. And she's really now trying to carve out herself as this new Martha Stewart.
And she's coming out with a cooking show as well on Netflix. She's coming out with a cooking show, and I mean, to be fair to Meghan, she has always tried to say that she's into healthy eating, organic food, cooking, but I don't see this being a success. It just will not happen for her because she's just burnt too many bridges. People just don't believe in her brand. They don't think she's authentic. So, are you an actress? Are you a guru? Are you a duchess? Are you a philanthropist?
Who are you, Meghan?
Who actually are you? This is what we're asking. I don't think anyone knows. I don't think Meghan really knows who she is.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
sat here, he'd have been 16 foot in the air.
That's Caroline witching.
Oh, sorry.
She
Are you on?
doesn't wait to be introduced. It's 10:19 with Britain's News with GBNews. Andrew, Nana Queer is here, which is lovely. And we have our panel, the broadcaster journalist Caroline, who's obviously wittering on before she gets introduced.
Because I don't know that, because you're wittering on to me.
And Jonathan Liss is with us too. Good morning. Let's talk to you, Jonathan. We've been talking about this defection. I've written many stories about defections over the years, whether it's Labour to Tory or vice versa. This one I did predict would backfire, but it's backfired very quickly.
I suppose it's one of those things where if you're affiliated with the Labour Party, if you're an MP, if you're a voter, a member, you're going to feel like this is a gut punch on some visceral level, because Natalie Elphicke doesn't represent anything that you stand for. This is an extremely right-wing MP.
Yeah.
There are very few Conservatives who would identify as being on the right of her. And so if you're in the Labour Party, you kind of think, well, if we're a broad enough church to welcome this person, then what do we actually stand for? This is a party that currently doesn't have room for Diane Abbott, but does have room for Natalie Elphicke, and that I find quite offensive in many ways.
I think, is Keir Starmer now going to try and woo Nigel Farage?
Well, I mean, but then that takes us to the second point, I suppose, which is that we are, I suppose, in a political bubble in that we're interested in politics, and so we will understand this. We'll be scratching our heads thinking, what on earth is going on? But for someone, you know, who doesn't pay much attention to politics, they'll see another Tory has fled the sinking ship. They won't necessarily know much about her. They might clock that she's the MP for Dover, which is on the, you know, the sharp end of boat crossings. And if this person has decided to cross over to Labour, then what on earth does that say about the Tory approach to small
I think
boats?
that's slightly patronising to the public, who are quite savvy on politics, especially having, you know, with Brexit, suddenly it became, you know, compulsive viewing. And so I think what you've got here is actually some very savvy individuals who are now voting and looking at this and thinking, what the hell does Sir Keir Starmer stand for? Or you might have on the other side people thinking, well, maybe Sir Keir Starmer's party is moving slightly more to the right and maybe it's more palatable now.
I think also what it does, if I was living in her constituency, you know, we're forever hearing MPs saying that, you know, we're in this job because we want to change things, we want to, you know, change the landscape. Actually, this proves that they don't. And if I was in Dover, I'd be disgusted with this woman because she doesn't care about them. She doesn't care about changing things. She cares about a job for herself after the election, and that's what she shifted for. And you're right, Rhys Starmer. You know, she has called Starmer the most vile names.
Yes.
You know, she's, you know, the flip-flop is nothing compared to what she's called him. And yet he's taken her on. And I think we have to question his judgment now. I mean, we've been questioning his judgment as a leader for a very long time. But as a Prime Minister, it's going to be different. He's taking people on who have been openly hostile to his party to score some political points against the Tories. Labour people will not work with her. This is the woman Rachel Reeves told her.
She did.
Off.
She did. Four-letter word.
Yes, and you wrote that in your column today. And so I just think, you know, Labour will not do... there has to be a deal for her in this. There can be no other reason for her defecting, because she is... There's not much more far-right than Natalie Elphicke in the party.
Makes me look liberal.
Well, exactly. It makes both of us look liberal. You know, she's not a woolly centrist. She was on the right. So a deal has been done now. I know Labour are denying that she's been offered a peerage. Well, even if she was, she's not going to get it now because they can't give it to her. But there is some deal. She's going to get some cushy job. They're saying she's going to be advising on housing. Well, that'll open up the doors for her for a really lucrative lobbying job or something. So there's a deal in it for her.
It's going to cause... I think this is going to cause real cynicism about politics, Jonathan, because Starmer says he's going to do things differently. It's the Tories who are rotten and corrupt. They've been in power for too long. I'm going to do things differently. And then he takes on board... Only 6 people, apparently, were in the loop. This decision. He hadn't even consulted Shenmers. You could see the look of horror on Labour MPs' faces.
Absolutely. And if I was horrified as a Labour voter, I was horrified because this is not the kind of Labour Party that I would like to project to the electorate. It's not the kind of Labour Party that I want to support. Would not have anything in common with Natalie Elphicke, and she wouldn't have anything in common with that party. So obviously, as a person, you know, as an individual, I loathe this move. I'm just saying, you know, to take in the broader context, I can understand why it might actually be a net positive for Labour, and that, you know, obviously people are savvy, but a lot of people don't pay much attention to politics. They'll see Tory, right-wing Tory has defected to Labour. That means the Labour Party must have changed.
People in Dover voted for a Tory, and they've now got a Labour person. So you don't have to be politically savvy to understand what that means for them.
Obviously, I completely have always believed that when someone defects to a party, they should submit themselves to approval from their electorate, because it's not fair that people should have an MP of a different party from the one they voted for.
I think you insult the public slightly to say that they don't understand what's happening here.
I'm not saying they don't understand what's happening here. I'm saying that it doesn't necessarily look bad for them.
That's kind of what you're saying, that they're not that savvy. People are savvy, and if you vote for a Tory, that's what you want in your constituency. And if you vote for someone who said they believed in what you believe in, you now realise that they actually believe in nothing apart from their own self.
Carol, the point is that what we have in politics at the moment is momentum. And so you have the momentum and you have the optics. These are obviously political words, but they are important, you know, in the way that we talk about vibes these days. Vibes are important because you have the whiff of death around the Conservative Party. Yeah. And when you have hard right Conservatives saying, I don't want to be involved in this party anymore, when you have centrist Conservatives like Dan Poulter saying, I don't want to be in this party anymore. But she is saying that she wants to, that she doesn't support the Conservative Party agenda anymore. She thinks they failed, and she believes in Labour's agenda.
This is a woman who won immigration. Yeah, I mean, it's not that she doesn't support that. She's saying that Rishi should have stopped the vote. She's joined a party that has no intention of stopping the vote.
I think it's a bizarre move. I agree with you. It's a bizarre move for different reasons from you, Jude. Well, actually, I think that's where we probably part company on this particular issue.
They don't want to stop the vote.
We agree on the fact that Elphicke's move is completely bizarre. I think where we might disagree, although I don't know what you think about this point, whether it's a negative for Labour. I think on balance, I don't support the move, but I don't think it's a negative for Labour politically.
You don't think it's negative to have somebody who stood behind her husband, who turned
you know,
let's just look at the things that she has
absolutely.
done.
She was suspended from Parliament for trying to interfere with the judge.
So you're saying that's a net benefit for
I'm saying it in raw political terms. I reiterate, I loathe the fact that the Labour Party has accepted her. I think that she'd have been a much better fit for reform.
But you still see it as a benefit?
I think it's, if you look at it, if you take it a step back and you think in pure political terms, which I know sounds quite cynical, but if you are doing pure electoral mathematics, for example, it is cynical, and I'm not a cynical person. I'm saying to you over and over again, I don't like it. I wouldn't have done it if I didn't like it.
Labour women MPs have got in their ranks now a woman who after her husband was convicted of sexual offences, sent to prison for 2 years, and the judge called him a predator and a serial liar.
And she also then tormented.
Yeah, it was
horrendous. She tormented
this. I have no truck with this person whatsoever.
She's going to be a car crash for Labour. The fact you think I can't understand how you think she's going to be a benefit.
Well, she doesn't say anything she'll be a benefit. Let's put it that way. If she starts speaking,
this woman.
If she starts speaking, she's going to speak.
Let's move on. Now, look, Prince Harry is returning to the United States today. I know you must be devastated, Malone.
Yes.
Devastated.
Well, no, I'm devastated at how I feel the public is turning. I feel they're now on Harry's side, and they're having a go at the King for not seeing him. I've done a couple of shows this week where the public have had a real go at me, saying, you know, it's family. I'm sorry. Just because you're a blood relative of someone, it doesn't entitle you to try and destroy them and to say the most vile things about them, to call them racist, to call them whatever. And I just think this idea that Prince Charles, he's only just come back to work after 3 months off. If Harry was so keen to... He's still being treated. If Harry was so keen to build bridges, he's had 3 months to come and see him when his dad wasn't doing anything. Yeah. He even could have come last week before his engagements for the Invictus Games started. He could have come then and spent some time. But no, he comes for 2 days and he expects the King to drop his incredibly busy schedule to fit him in for an hour. Why would you do that? Yesterday, he met Rishi Sunak. He met the PM of Fiji.
He did a garden party.
Day before he had the garden. Yeah, he had the garden. That was yesterday. Yeah. So it's not like he's just making these engagements up. He had them. And the idea that he should drop everything to fit in this selfish, wayward plan is beyond.
But you know what I think, Jonathan? I think it shows the King cannot trust his son.
Exactly.
That's why he won't see him.
Well, he did. I mean, I think we have to put it into a little bit of perspective, Andrew. Yeah. He did see him at the start of his diagnosis. Harry came especially over from Los Angeles to see him.
Half an hour.
Okay, fine, but Harry, you can't. You know, I think we can't have it both ways. Either Harry doesn't care, or he's doing it for attention or whatever. I mean,
well, that's kind of what a lot of people might think.
He flew over direct from Los Angeles to.
Yeah, but what about this time? The King
so
didn't see him.
Okay, fine. So I'm not. Look, I don't know what's behind Harry's diary. Okay, obviously, if you live far away and you come to Britain and you want to see your parent who's being treated for cancer,
but the King could have found time in his diary.
I believe the King probably could have found. Yes, and that's.
Because I think it's because he doesn't trust him.
And because, can you just imagine? After the last half-hour visit he had, Harry went straight back to America and he did an interview with Good Morning America where he talked about the meeting with his father. And yes, he didn't tell any cancer details because he didn't know any. He probably wasn't told any details.
Because he doesn't trust him.
But how can... If I was Camilla and Wills, I would say to him, do not see this man because he's insulted both Kate and he's insulted Charles and both are being treated for cancer.
Well, he hasn't done either of those things since the diagnosis.
And both have been... that's really big on us.
The King did see him.
He called Camilla
evil. The King did agree to see him before.
Sorry?
The King did agree to see him before.
Yeah, but he hasn't... Get it right. Harry has not come to see Charles right now. He's come to be feted for his role with the Invictus Games for the 10th anniversary of the Games. Which is a brilliant...
And what about bringing his kids as well, to introduce them to the King and the family? I mean, you know...
Lilibet.
And he hasn't.
That seems a bit unfair to the children to involve them in their altercation. If they don't want to get on, that's fine, but surely the children...
Well, look, I mean, look, a lot of people watching this will have difficult families and difficult relationships, and you will know if you have a difficult family that people talking about it from the outside are always going to be talking about it with blindfolds on because you don't.
No,
you can't
we don't have
know.
blindfolds on. We've got a 400-page temper tantrum book called Spare. So it's not. We're not talking about it from the inside. Harry has made public every grievance.
We don't have all the information. We don't know what the conversations are that happen in private. Obviously, Harry has put his side of the story on, but we don't know everything that's happening, Carol. And, you know, obviously, I think that we can all agree that it would be really great if the King could have a good relationship with his son, because they are father and son.
How easy is that going to be now? Because, as Andrew says, the trust is shot now. They can't ever say anything in front of him now. He can never be readmitted to the inner circle because he will blab it on television. He'll go back to America and do it again.
The royal family is all about discretion.
Yes, but I think that we also have to bear in mind, Carol, we've spoken about this before, that the royal family is in a very, very different place from where it was a year ago. You have the King, who's has serious illness. You've got the Princess of Wales, who's being treated for cancer as well. You know, the royal family looks a lot more fragile than it did.
And Harry has insulted
both
of those.
Harry
has hurt and
he offered to come back, I think,
both of those people.
I've heard that, you know,
we don't know.
There were reports that Harry offered to sort of step into the breach. We don't know how truthful those reports are.
Why would you want him to do? This was the man 5 years ago.
He can't win. He can't win. If he offers two, he can't win. If he offers nothing,
we made it quite clear. You can't have 1 foot in and 1 foot out.
Yes.
Well,
right. Now.
Well, thanks to you both. Let's get your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you. It's 10:32. The top stories from the GB Newsroom. The Bank of England is expected to leave its base interest rate unchanged at 5.25% for a sixth time as economists wait for inflation to come under control. The decision to be announced today comes as inflation remains at 3.2%, above the bank's 2% target. It would mean a longer period of higher borrowing costs, which have squeezed households since interest rates started rising at the end of 2021. Both major political parties have made economic growth a key part of their campaign pledges, with Rishi Sunak promising this year would see the economy bouncing back. Former Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi has announced he'll step down as an MP at the next election. In a statement posted to social media, Mr Zahawi said that his mistakes were his own, but it had been his greatest honour to serve his constituents. He's been MP for Stratford-on-Avon for 14 years, but he was sacked as Tory party chairman in January last year after an inquiry found he'd failed to disclose that HMRC was investigating his tax affairs. Commuters are facing a third consecutive day of disruption as the rail industry's longest ever strike action continues. Members of ASLEF at LNER, TransPennine Express and Northern Trains are walking out today. The union claims its members haven't had a pay rise in 5 years and is accusing the government of giving up trying to resolve the issue. But the government says drivers have been offered salaries of up to £65,000, almost twice the UK average. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2476 and 1.1630 euros. The price of gold is £1,852.36 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,364 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Well, up next, have you struggled to get hold of your medicine at your local pharmacy? Find out why drug shortages in England are now at such critical levels that patients are at risk of harm and even death. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Northumberland, the A695 remains closed in both directions between Corbridge and Riding Mill after a tractor caught fire yesterday. It's left a fuel spill. On Merseyside, the A580 East Lancs Road is closed in both directions west of junction 4 of the M57 between Knowsley and Fazakerley after an accident with delays as you divert. Now, there's disruption to some train services in England again today because of industrial action. Northern and Transpennine Express services aren't running. There's a reduced service on a number of other routes, and LNER are only running a limited service between King's Cross Station in London and both Leeds and Edinburgh on the East Coast Main Line. And on the M25 in Kent, there are long anti-clockwise delays to the Dartford tunnels after a lorry broke down earlier. The queue's back beyond junction 3 for the M20. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Today is a good day for the King, a good day for Britain. I'm sure you'll be hoping that those Not My King morons decide to give it a rest for a little while, because he is still dealing with an illness, isn't he?
He's still dealing with an illness, and he appears to be dealing extremely well. I think he comes from the fact that he's extremely strong and fit. I think I understand that will help his treatment enormously. And I think, as your professor was saying, it's the fatigue that can be a brutal thing when you're trying to lead a normal life with cancer. But I think that it's going to really help him psychologically to get out there, and people are going to be giving him enormous support. I mean, I know, as you say, there's an anti-monarchy brigade, but there's been an anti-monarchy brigade since there's been a monarchy. So that is not such a big deal. It has always been there. I feel that Charles is going to get a lot of support from the sort of joyousness of people seeing him and, you know, wishing him well. And I think that that's going to be immensely important to him. It's a very busy time, but I think a boost for William and Kate. William's out and about. We don't know about Kate, but I feel that the King will definitely. It's a very busy time coming up with the anniversary of D-Day in Normandy, which I know he will be desperate to be a part of. Then there's the big royal season, the Trooping the Colour, the Garter ceremony, Royal Ascot, and then he is hosting the Emperor and Empress of Japan at the end of June. So it's a absolutely packed month for someone that is presumably going to get very tired.
Yes, indeed. I mean, if he gets through all of that, I think that will be absolutely massive, won't it?
Now, you may already know this because it may be affecting you, but being warned that drug shortages in England are now at such critical level, some patients are at the risk of immediate harm or even death. Well, joining us now is the pharmacist Thoran Govind. Good morning to you. This is a problem that seems to be affecting England only. Have I got that right? And if so, what is causing these shortages?
Well, we know that it is affecting England, definitely. There are actual global shortages that people are having to deal with, but the latest data we've got is on England, and it's for a multitude of reasons. The inflation, increased price of raw materials, issues with getting drugs into the country, the lack of homegrown manufacturing as well. So there's lots of different things which are coming together here, causing immense problems for patients. This is a critical problem, and it is causing big problems for our patients. And not just that, unfortunately, as healthcare professionals, we're also at the brunt of it, facing abuse, because we are the ones who are having to deliver that sad information to patients that we can't get hold of their medication.
So, as long as I can remember, there's always been issues with this. Even many years ago, when I was getting formula milk, there was an issue there. What are the main products that are being affected by this, and which sort of patients are being mainly affected?
So there's insulins, there's ADHD medication, there is some weight loss medications. It's a real mix. Those are some of the core ones that we're encountering, epilepsy medication. And really, what we've been asking the government for so long now as pharmacists is the ability to make substitutions. So at the moment, if you've got prescribed tablets, I can't give you capsules, for example, in a community pharmacy setting in England. And that is really frustrating, because there's things that we could do which could help ease the burden for our patients. But ultimately, we have to send patients back to the prescriber, to the doctor, and that's wasting an immense amount of GP and prescriber time as well. It's wholly frustrating. We're spending hours each day, and patients are suffering because of it.
Well, we've been told that it's not just suffering. Some patients, this could be a life-threatening issue, Thorin, for some people.
Absolutely. If you can't get hold of your insulin and you need that on a day-to-day basis, as a baseline hormone, that is critical. It's ridiculous, the stage that we're in now of this it's been particularly bad over the last, I would say, year or so, even before then. But it's just getting to a head now where we are struggling as healthcare professionals to be able to do our role. And we are also having to deal with the consequences. It's not Rishi Sunak who's in the pharmacy explaining to patients why they can't get hold of their medication. It's people like us who are spending hours on the phone to wholesalers trying to track down medications, and our staff who are having to deal with it alongside our other work. So this is an additional burden on us, and we're already trying to do so much more.
What would you like to see being done about this? Because, as you said, there are multiple reasons as to why it's happening. What would be one of the big things that could make a change that might make things easier?
The biggest thing that could be done, in most urgent thing, could be allowing pharmacists to make substitutions, because at the moment we are unable to do so. We have to wait for what's called a serious shortage protocol to be set down by Parliament, and that takes time. And it's too slow, that process. So anything that can assist pharmacists on the ground is going to assist us.
And this is a worldwide problem. Why is it especially bad in Britain, in England? Why is England worse than other parts of the United Kingdom?
It's unfortunately, Britain, England is an unattractive place for people to be setting up manufacturing at the moment, and we don't have a lot of homegrown manufacturing, so that would make a big difference. Also, companies are preferring to trade into the EU rather than bringing their products into the UK because of some of the costs associated with that. But globally, conflicts across the world, raw material costs, there's challenges to everyone. Even, on our day-to-day basis, you and I will have seen it when you go into the supermarket, everything is costing so much more, isn't it?
Oh, that is true. The price of everything has gone up.
Yeah. Is this the worst it's ever been?
I would say, yes, this is absolutely the worst it's been, because we are spending so many hours. And also, it's just so distressing. I have had patients coming in crying to me because they can't get hold of their medication. They've been to multiple pharmacies to try and get hold of it. This supply chain is not working. The healthcare supply chain is not working. And something needs to be urgently done about it, because patients are under threat because of this. And, I dare say there'll be information coming out in the not too, distant future where we see the real impact of this.
Yeah. Thorin, thank you very much for talking to us. That's Thorin Kovic.
It's very worrying, isn't it?
It is. I mean, especially part of it has got to be one of the drugs she obviously mentioned. We know the Ozempic thing.
Yeah.
Which a lot of celebrities are using, and it's become the must-have drug.
Yeah.
So we've got things like that being pushed at people, where the people who really need it can't get hold of it.
But not having your insulin, I mean, I think about people like Theresa May. She injects herself 3 times a day.
Wow.
And that explains why I struggled to get my statin a few weeks ago. They said, there are none. I said, what, none anywhere?
But it's interesting.
None at all.
It's interesting that you said that there's the process by which the government allow them to use substitute products, which is so slow that it's partly causing the problem. Why can't we fix that? And also manufacturing. We're not manufacturing anything in this country, or much of it. We need to have a manufacturing base here, don't we?
But also, the moment you hear the dead hand of government, Nana, you know there's a problem.
Yeah, it's going to take ages.
Civil bureaucracy,
nightmare.
Forms to fill in.
I know.
Paperwork. Just let them get on with it. They know what they're doing, the pharmacists. And, of course, the pharmacists are being deployed more and more by the government in the battle in the NHS because you can't get to see your doctor.
Well, yes, of course, and they're getting busier and busier.
They've got so much on their plate already.
I just don't get it why we can't do things here. I mean, and there was a slight touch on Brexit there that has made things difficult for us as well. But surely we can set up our own people, and we're not attractive to invest in this country as well.
Well, very worrying. Let us know if you've been affected by that, what drugs, and if your pharmacy is helping out here. So what's the address? I'm going to remember the address.
gbnews.com/your say. Up next, Prince Harry is flying back home today. That's Montecito, not here. After being snubbed by his dad, King Charles, yesterday. So is there any hope at the royal rift being fixed? You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Morning, here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There is a bit of mist and fog around first thing this morning, but otherwise it's going to be a fine day for many of us. Away from the far north-northwest, that is. Here there is quite a bit of cloud and there will be some outbreaks of drizzly rain through much of the day, but elsewhere across the bulk of the country, plenty of fine sunny weather around. Lots of blue skies, and in that sunshine it is going to feel pretty warm. Temperatures up a little bit compared to yesterday. There's a good chance that we're going to see highs of around 23, possibly 24 Celsius towards the southeast, and even further north, despite the slightly cloudier skies, temperatures getting into the high teens quite easily. Little change as we go through this evening and overnight, sticking with the thicker cloud and some drizzly rain across far northern parts and a few spots elsewhere across parts of Scotland. Otherwise, lots of areas having a dry and at times clear night, so once more we will see a few pockets of mist and fog developing. It won't be a particularly chilly start to the day tomorrow. Lots of places, particularly in the towns and cities, holding up in double figures. Again, any mist and fog patches will relatively quickly burn back as we go through tomorrow morning, and then once more another fine picture across the bulk of the country. Still a little bit of drizzly rain, perhaps for Orkney and Shetland, but really for many northern central parts of Scotland it's going to be drier and brighter than today. Again, temperatures climbing a little bit further, so for many it may even feel a bit warmer than today. Once more, I'll see you again soon.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
"49 minutes after 10 o'clock. Good morning. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Nana Queer, and Andrew Pearce. Now, the Duke of Sussex attended the Invictus Games anniversary just miles away from King Charles, who held his first garden party of the year yesterday. But Harry was snubbed by his dad.
That's definitely... There's no other way to describe it. That's not to say Harry hasn't been supported by family members. There's some of Princess Diana's relatives, including her brother, the Lord Spencer, were all in attendance at the Invictus service at St Paul's Cathedral. Well, let's talk now to royal commentator Michael Cole. Michael, morning to you. Whatever way we look at this, the King could have found time in his diary to see Prince Harry. He chose not to, and I wonder if it's because trust now has just completely broken down between them.
Good morning, Andrew. Good morning, Nana. Andrew, I think you've got it exactly right. The fact that the King has not found time during the 3 days that his younger son has been in London to see him is a definite right royal flea in the ear for Prince Harry. And a lot of people around the country and around the world will be saying, and about time too. What Harry and his wife have said, either directly or through their amanuensis and fan, Omid Scobie, in his book, Endgame, it's been very, very bitter, very hard, very cruel allegations against not just the King and Queen Camilla, but Prince William and his wife, who, as we know, is being treated for the as yet undisclosed form of cancer. And that has gone home very, very firmly. Nothing could actually be worse in a family to have this division and bitterness and unkindness. And words have power. Actions have consequences. And I think that's what we're seeing played out here. The division between the California couple in their hilltop Camelot and the British royal family getting on with the job is now very, very deep, and the divisions are stark, us to see. And between, indeed, the Spencer family and the Mountbatten Windsors.
Well, Karen Malone earlier was suggesting that people are starting to feel a bit more sorry for Harry and there's a bit more support towards him. Are you sensing anything like that?
Well, I tell you what, Nana, I thought it was great that he got a great cheer yesterday because people suddenly saw the happy prince that we used to know, the man who set up Sentabale charity in Africa, the man who served 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan as the commander of an Apache attack helicopter, the man who, it's a brilliant innovation, thought of the Invictus Games and brought them into being with the help, ironically, of Prince William and Kate, the Princess of Wales, as she is now. They were instrumental, along with the Ministry of Defence, in getting that off the ground. And no praise is high enough for what Prince Harry did. But all that was done, Nana, pre-Meghan. Now you see a different man, a very different person. Do you remember the happy prince joking with Usain Bolt on the running track? He was so popular. So people cheered him when he went in. I think they're also cheering the Invictus Games and the people who participate from 22 different nations. You will remember at the Platinum Jubilee Thanksgiving service at the same venue at St Paul's Cathedral, when he and Meghan arrived, there were some ragged jeers and distinct booing in the crowd. Well, I hope that when Harry heard those cheers yesterday, he will think of what he's lost. The public affection is a very, very fragile and precious thing. And he had it in his hand. For all his youthful indiscretions, he was extremely popular. And he's given all that up. He says he loves this country. He says he loves his family. Well, he's in the city of his birth at the moment before going off to Nigeria. Do you know what I think, Nana? I just think about the late and always much missed Diana. She loved her boys, and she always thought they would be there for each other, always. She made them make a promise when they were quite small boys that they would always love and support each other. I hope while he's in the city, back in London, and even flying out to Nigeria to meet up with Meghan, I hope he thinks about what his mother said.
Yeah, and Michael, just before we let you go, I was surprised, actually. I thought the King probably would have, even if it was just half an hour, but it's clear that the rift now is just so deep.
I thought so too, Andrew. I wrote as much, and I really did think, because he had said, talking about my darling boy, as he talked about Prince Harry, that his door would always be open to him. But, you know, these things have gone very, very deep. Most men can put up with being insulted. My goodness, I've been insulted by experts. But what they don't like is the significant person in their life, their wife or their partner, being insulted. And Prince Charles does not like the fact.
Michael, this is what I was saying to Andrew about that. Listen, it's really good to talk to you. That is Michael Cole, still to come. The head of Wetherspoons, Tim Martin, joins us shortly to explain why Guinness has become fashionable. Do you drink
Guinness? I don't have Guinness very often. I was in Ireland earlier this last year, and I did try some in Ireland. It was very nice in Ireland. I think it tastes different in Ireland.
I think it might.
We'll have to ask him.
We'll find out.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There is a bit of mist and fog around first thing this morning, but otherwise it's going to be a fine day for many of us. Away from the far north-northwest, that is. Here there is quite a bit of cloud and there will be some outbreaks of drizzly rain through much of the day, but elsewhere across the bulk of the country, plenty of fine sunny weather around. Lots of blue skies, and in that sunshine it is going to feel pretty warm. Temperatures up a little bit compared to yesterday. There's a good chance that we're going to see highs of around 23, possibly 24 Celsius towards the southeast, and even further north, despite the slightly cloudier skies, temperatures getting into the high teens quite easily. Little change as we go through this evening and overnight, sticking with the thicker cloud and some drizzly rain across far northern parts and a few spots elsewhere across parts of Scotland. Otherwise, lots of areas having a dry and at times clear night, so once more we will see a few pockets of mist and fog developing. It won't be a particularly chilly start to the day tomorrow. Lots of places, particularly in the towns and cities, holding up in double figures. Again, any mist and fog patches will relatively quickly burn back as we go through tomorrow morning, and then once more another fine picture across the bulk of the country. Still a little bit of drizzly rain, perhaps for Orkney and Shetland, but really for many northern central parts of Scotland it's going to be drier and brighter than today. Again, temperatures climbing a little bit further, so for many it may even feel a bit warmer than today. Once more, I'll see you again soon.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox and I won the Great British Giveaway. I'd say why not? What is it? The price of a text and £2 to enter. And if I can win it, anybody can win it. And they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go. How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The
People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Morning, 11 a.m. on Thursday, the 9th of May. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Andrew Pearce, and the fabulous Nana Raquia.
Well, an own goal for Labour. Yes, Sir Keir Starmer is met with backlash from left-wing Defection of his party after it's accepted the defecting Tory MP Natalie Elphicke.
And the former Chancellor, and he was Education Secretary too, Nadim Zahawi, he's standing down at the next election. He's the 64th Conservative MP to say he or she is off.
Oh dear, another one bites the dust. Then protect Jewish students. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak urges universities to take a zero-tolerance approach to anti-Semitism.
And at midday, we're going to get the Bank of England's decision on whether to raise or lower the current rate of interest. Liam Halligan has more.
All eyes on the Bank of England at 12 noon in just an hour. The 9 economists on the Monetary Policy Committee will let us know if interest rates are about to be cut.
I bet they don't cut them.
They should cut them, really. I mean, because it doesn't really... I mean, it's the reason why they, you know, global markets are the problem, not interest rates. They'll just make us all poorer.
I know, but they should cut them down.
Just cut them down. Well, listen, send us your thoughts. What do you think? I think you're going to say that they should be cut, shouldn't they? gbnews.com/your say. But first, let's get your latest news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you very much and good morning. It's 11 o'clock. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The chair of the Labour Party, Annalise Dodd, says former Tory MP Natalie Elphicke has been held to account for her past comments about sexual assault. The MP for Dover announced her defection from the Tories to Labour just moments before Prime Minister's questions yesterday. But it's ignited a backlash among some Labour MPs after comments Ms Elphicke made in defence of her former partner during his conviction for sexual assault. While Annalise Dodd told GB News that proper process has been followed.
Well, those were very, very serious issues. The sexual assault that was rightly prosecuted, and of course there was a parliamentary process that followed that, including a parliamentary process that applied to Natalie Elphicke. So it's absolutely right that there was accountability there. It's an incredibly important matter. Every workplace, including Parliament, has got to be free of sexual harassment.
The Bank of England is expected to leave its base interest rate unchanged at 5.25% for a sixth time as economists wait for inflation to come under control. The decision, to be announced in around an hour's time, comes as inflation remains at 3.2%, above the bank's 2% target. It would mean a longer period of higher borrowing costs, which have squeezed households since interest rates started rising at the end of 2021. Both major political parties have made economic growth a key part of their campaign pledges, with Rishi Sunak promising this year would see the economy bouncing back. Commuters are facing a third consecutive day of disruption as the rail industry's longest ever strike action continues. Members of ASLEF at LNER, TransPennine Express and Northern Trains are walking out today, with none of the train companies using new laws aimed at ensuring minimum service levels during strikes. ASLEF's dispute has been running for 2 years and it hasn't met the rail delivery group for fresh talks in over a year. The union claims its members haven't had a pay rise in 5 years and is accusing the government of giving up trying to resolve the issue. But the government says drivers have been offered salaries of up to £65,000, almost twice the UK average. Former Chancellor Nadim Zahawi has announced he'll step down as an MP at the next election. He's been MP for Stratford-on-Avon for 14 years, but he was sacked as Tory party chairman in January last year after an inquiry found he'd failed to disclose that HMRC was investigating his tax affairs. In a statement posted to social media, Mr Zahawi said that his mistakes were his own, but it had been his greatest honour to serve his constituents. Experts are warning of a rise in the shortage of medicines, with more people forced into what's being called pharmacy bingo in a search for vital medications. A new poll has revealed that severe shortages have become a daily occurrence in many pharmacies across England. Health leaders say supply chain issues have worsened since 2021 and are calling on the government to launch an urgent review. A spokesperson for the Department for Health says supply issues aren't unique to Britain and most issues are managed with minimal impact on patients. 16 new special schools are being opened as the government aims to expand vital support for pupils with special educational needs. Data published in March showed that around 2 in 3 special schools in England were at or over capacity in the last academic year. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan says the government is responding to a rise in demand for school places.
Has been a large increase in special educational needs, largely because we know more and we know how to put strategies in place to help children overcome them. But what we're trying to do is to keep up with the demand for places. So we're building and expanding by 60,000 more places across the UK, across England. And if you contrast that with the Labour Party in the last government, they actually reduced the number of people with specialised school places by about 4,000. So we've been catching up from that and then obviously making sure that we keep up with demand.
For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Andrew and Anna.
Hello and welcome to Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce, and it's the fabulous Nana Acquia.
Thank you, Andrew.
You're doing Patrick Christie's show.
I'm hosting Patrick Christie's show on Friday.
The ubiquitous Nana Acquia. You're everywhere.
Oh, thank you. Well, you know, that's me.
Now, we want to hear what you think. Send us your views and points of view. Where do we send them to? We send them to gbnews.com/you'll say. We've had a few in, actually.
Well, this is one from Joseph, because we were talking about Prince Harry earlier, and Joseph says, bye-bye, Harry.
And Debbie says, proper brightened up my morning seeing the fabulous Nana this morning. And Ross says about Harry, his dad should always be there for him.
Well, I think his dad always is there for him, but unfortunately, Harry may be carrying some sort of recording material, so you have to be careful around Harry.
Good point.
And David says, what is he going to put in the next book now? Exactly my point, David. You are with me. But of course, this is quite an interesting day today because the Bank of England is expected to leave its base interest rate unchanged at 5.25% for the 6th time as economists wait for inflation to come under control.
Well, our business and economics editor, who has his finger on the pulse, Liam Halligan, is here. Liam, come on, it's not going to be good, is it?
Well, look, for a lot of GB News viewers and listeners, they don't want an interest rate cut. They want interest rates to go up because they're living on their savings, maybe they're pensioners, and for years, people that have put their hard-earned money away, saving it, doing the right thing, have got a rate of interest. If it hasn't been ultra-low, it certainly is ultra-low or even negative by the time you include inflation. For now, interest rates are above inflation. The interest rate is 5.25%. Inflation's 3.2%, so you've got a real interest rate that's positive. So savers are getting some returns. But of course, for a lot of other viewers and listeners, they'll have mortgages, they'll be facing a remortgage, they've got other personal loans, maybe the business that they run or work at has got indebtedness. So when interest rates come down, you should see companies investing more, you should see consumers spending more in general. But it's not going to happen today. For months and months, the Tories have been pinning their hopes on interest rate cuts, maybe 2 or 3 interest rate cuts before an election in October, November. It's the reason, Nana, isn't it, why they decided to go long. Let's get some tax cuts in, let's get some interest rate cuts in. Fingers crossed the Bank of England, which, of course, is independent, would comply with that wish for interest rate cuts. But inflation remains stubbornly high. Inflation in the UK is not transitory, as the Bank of England said for months and months. That was completely wrong. It's the opposite of transitory. It's high and it's stubborn, and it's not going away anytime soon. We're at 3.2% inflation. It's still above the Bank of England's target. It may be that next month, when we get the interest rate, when we get the inflation number for, it'll actually be later this month, we're going to get the inflation number for April in a couple of weeks' time. It may be that it comes down significantly, but there's a lot of concern it's going to then bounce back up.
But it doesn't really control anything at all, because the reason why interest rates have gone up are, the reason why we're having inflation and all those things is because of global factors and not localised national factors.
I couldn't agree more, Nana.
So why are they tinkering around with it? I mean, we're hooked on lower rates. Obviously, for some people it's good, but for the majority of people, they probably would rather the rate was down. Surely that would stimulate more things.
Look, you're completely right. If inflation is stubbornly high because of oil prices, because of gas prices, because of geopolitics, frankly, because of, Israel, Hamas, Russia, Ukraine, and that is true, oil prices have stayed quite high. Talk to any van driver, anyone who drives for a living, petrol and diesel prices have been going up of late, not coming down. Yeah. That feeds into prices overall, of course. But the Bank of England, even though it doesn't control oil prices, of course, it can't be seen to be lowering interest rates when inflation is moving away from the Bank of England's 2% target. And that's the danger, Nana. We may see this summer inflation spiking back up because of energy prices.
But that's just like optics then, aren't they? They want to look like...
Central bank is all about optics. It's all about credibility. It's all about, have they got the guts to raise interest rates to head off inflation? And they didn't have the guts to do that, in my view, early enough. That's why interest rates went higher and inflation went higher than it otherwise would and should have done.
But if inflation was to go up again, that is politically catastrophic.
It's politically dynamite, Andrew, which is why I've been warning about it for the last 3 months.
He's got 5 pledges. The only one he's really achieving is inflation is falling towards 2%.
In the States, inflation actually has gone up again.
Yeah.
In the States, there are some people in financial markets who think the next move in interest rates could be up, because America has got a stubborn inflation problem too. There are still lingering supply chain issues.
Bad news for Biden.
Supply coming from Asia, components, finished goods, are they getting through the Red Sea? Not often they're not these days. All this is feeding into inflation. Look, I don't want to be too downbeat. There will be a UK interest rate cut. It will come relatively soon. There might just be one, though, maximum 2 now before a general election. And the path to that cut may not be smooth because we could yet see, I'm afraid, another spike in inflation this summer.
And when do we know? Technically, we're still in recession, Liam?
Well, we're in recession because the last 2 GDP numbers were negative. In other words, the economy shrank during the last 6 months of 2023. We've got a GDP number, growth number coming out on Friday. Right. It's probably going to show that we're out of recession. That's why Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, was preemptively saying, if the ministers tell you that the economy's getting better, they're gaslighting you. They're trying to fool you.
Well, we'll see what they do when they're in power. Ian Halligan, really good to talk.
I don't know why they use that word gaslighting. It's the wrong word.
Because none of us know what it means, so we all end up talking about it.
Maybe you're right.
Gaslighters of all. But Rishi Sunak, though, he's not a gaslighter, is he? He's telling university leaders today to do more to combat anti-Semitism on college campuses.
So the Prime Minister wants a zero-tolerance approach to the intimidation of Jewish students by a vocal and aggressive minority whose right to free speech, he says, does not entitle them to harass people.
Well, joining us now is author of Lily's Promise, Dove Foreman. Dove, thank you very much for joining us. Look, this whole thing is frightening, I think, what's happening on university campuses. I don't think it's equivalent to what's happening in terms of the Islamophobia. That's just my view from what I've seen. But what are your thoughts on all of it?
So I'm actually also a university student myself, and we have an encampment at my university, the University College London. And I think, firstly, the people that are protesting have unrealistic demands of the university. They're never going to accept some of the things. In my own university, they are demanding that the student centre is named after an alumni who was killed in Gaza in an airstrike. But what they don't mention about this man is that he supported the Hamas terror attacks of October 7th. When they found a baby burned in an oven, he retweeted that and said, with or without baking powder. And he compared Netanyahu to Hitler. So this is someone that they are trying to get the university to name a building after, and they won't move until it is named. That's what they say. But of course, that's an unrealistic demand, and it's creating a real climate of fear, pervasive fear, for Jewish students like myself during exam season in university. And whilst we haven't been seeing the scenes that are replica of what's been going on in America, we are seeing people intimidating Jews on campus.
And the terrible irony about these protests, universities are supposed to be places of openness and debate, and yet they're trying to shut down young Jewish students. And we've seen what's happened in America. They're actually trying to stop them going to their lessons.
Terrible.
Do you fear this is what it's going to end with some of these protests we're seeing at universities here?
Look, I don't know how it's going to play out, but what I do know is that university is a place for people to have political ideas, to be able to develop their political ideas and have freedom of speech, but that has to be within the law. And that mustn't mean that because they feel that they want to protest a certain idea, that Jewish students can't feel safe being Jewish on campus. And unfortunately, at times, it does feel like that. And again, whilst there isn't violence like there has been in the United States, I do fear that it could go into that as these protests continue to go on.
It's like a sort of infection, is it, what's happening here with... I don't understand why everyone's been captured in this way by this. I don't really get it. How do you feel, Dov? Because you're a student, as you said. Do you feel unsafe on your campus?
Look, you spoke about an infection. I mean, they're all wearing masks. It seems like there is an infection going around, and that infection is the infection and virus of anti-Semitism. It feels like we're back in, I don't know, COVID 1939 in Germany. And at times I do feel unsafe when I walk with my kippah, a visibly Jewish sign, and I have to walk into university through the main gates where there's a protest there and they have signs up saying that someone who's a Zionist should go off our campus and shouldn't be allowed, or where they say crimes and genocides, all things which are lies, or when they shout from the river to the sea, a genocidal chant against Jews in the state of Israel. That does make me feel unsafe because I am a Zionist. 95% of Jewish people are Zionists. So where exactly do they want me, a Zionist, to go on campus? If they say that campus is not safe for Jews, it's not safe for Zionists, then it's not safe for Jews.
This is terrible irony because, of course, Dov, your own grandmother is a survivor of the Holocaust, and I never forget the interview she gave where people had said to her, Hitler obviously forgot some, and she now talks about how she's never known such anti-Semitism in Britain as we've now got in the last few months since the war in Gaza. Yeah,
I mean, look, my great-grandmother came to the UK along with so many survivors in the hope that the liberal values and democracy and the freedom of speech and freedom of religion would be upheld. Unfortunately, it doesn't feel like for Jewish people at the moment that is always the case. I mean, it even feels at times like the police force aren't there to protect us, and that's not acceptable. You know, the great litmus test back to universities of post-Holocaust emancipation was meant to be whether Jewish students like myself could learn freely again in universities like every other student. And unfortunately, it feels like freedom of speech for other students is at its highest when it's against Jewish people, when it's against the state of Israel. And it does, again, make Jewish students like myself feel at risk on university and feel unsafe and feel like campus is unwelcoming. And UCL and all the universities are failing in their responsibility to protect us.
Do you accept the criticism some make that there's a two-tier police approach to this? They turn a blind eye to anti-Semitic abuse. We've seen it at some of the big marches in London on the weekends, and yet and the Islamophobic abuse they crack down on very quickly.
Well, they should do. I mean, any hatred is unacceptable. Yeah. And I would, like they call out Islamophobia, they should also be calling out anti-Semitism. And at times, as you say, it doesn't feel like they do. I think that the police have done a great job in some instances of protecting Jewish people, but there's a lot of work for them to do. And I don't understand why Mark Rowley isn't being strict on these protests. And if we would have seen in the first weeks of the protest a crackdown on the pure, brazen, open anti-Semitism on our streets, the placards which people are carrying, if we had seen those being cracked down on the first week of the protest, we wouldn't see what we have on our streets at the moment. And what we have on our streets is unacceptable. Again, Jewish people can't feel safe on the weekends in central London. I don't care what people say. I know that I wouldn't feel safe as a Jewish person on the streets of London on a Saturday.
How shameful is that?
That's terrible, isn't it?
Dolph, thanks for joining us. That's Dolph Foreman, the author of Bloody Promise. Isn't that shameful?
That was embarrassing, really, that we should be allowing that sort of behaviour on the streets.
Yeah.
Even people keep calling it sort of freedom of speech, freedom of speech. You're not really free to restrict somebody else's freedom in that way. I think that's
and the pro-Israel march, of course, was cancelled.
Oh, yeah.
Because the police said it couldn't guarantee the safety. Outrageous.
But the speed that they jump on, say, a far-right march or something like that is incredible. But yet, the pro-Palestine stuff seems to be, well, acceptable in some way. Listen, you know, it's fine to protest for peace, I get it, but if you are in the company of people who are holding anti-Semitic symbols and things like that, then you are part of the problem. You can't be saying that that's acceptable. But stay tuned, because up next we'll find out why old-fashioned insults like plonker are on the verge of dying out with the younger generations. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I've been called a plonker many times.
Oh, me too.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Rishi Sunak has come out fighting and declared war on what he's called the UK's sick note culture. The country's welfare state bill costs the average taxpayer now £2,000 every single year for every British taxpayer. Astonishing numbers, Catherine, simply mind-bending. 69 billion quid every year now goes on benefits. I paid my tax bill last month. Where did your tax go? I clicked on it. Long-term sickness and benefits is now second only to the NHS on what we spend our tax pound on. This is simply unsustainable.
That's exactly what the Prime Minister said. 69 billion a year on long-term sick and disability benefits, projected to rise to 90 billion by the end of the next Parliament if nothing has done. As he said, it is totally, totally unsustainable. And the message from Rishi Sunak really is, tough love. You're going to take your medicine. It's going to be good for you. You may not like it. Let's have a look at what he had to say earlier.
Everyone with the potential should be supported. And not just to earn, but to contribute and belong. And we must never tolerate barriers that hold people back from making their contribution and from sharing in that sense of self-worth that comes from feeling part of being something bigger than ourselves. And that is why this is a moral mission, and why the value of work is so central to my vision for welfare reform.
Certainly, Rishi Sunak said in the speech, in the period since the pandemic, something has gone wrong. Of course, millions of people had their wages paid by furlough. Now, that was an entirely artificial situation in an exceptional circumstance, but quite a lot of people left the workplace and simply haven't come back.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 11:22 with Britain's News on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Nana Aquia. That was our other panellist talking out of turn, actually. Normally
Makes a change.
Normally Karen.
Never talk out of
turn. But actually, it's Jonathan Liss talking out of turn. So the panel is back.
But Jonathan, you should point out that he asked you a question and you were just answering it. You weren't wittering, you were just answering.
I never witter, Carol. It's not my style.
Well, exactly.
Right, what are we talking about, team?
We're talking about this woman cyclist.
Oh, yes.
The cyclist is Oriel Gray. The lady who went to prison is a lady called Oriel Gray, 50 years old. She went to prison. She was found guilty of manslaughter because she shouted at a woman cyclist who was on the pavement, a lady called Celia Ward, who was 77, and she shouted to her to get off the pavement. Now, when you saw the film, it looked bad. But it turns out that that Oriel Gray, who was sent to prison, is she has cerebral palsy.
So I think we should just explain what actually happened after.
Okay, so she told her to get off the pavement. So the lady, the pensioner, went onto the road and sadly was hit and killed by a vehicle. Now, this woman, Oriel Gray, was convicted of manslaughter for this.
Which was bizarre.
Which was the most bizarre thing at the time, because anyone who saw a picture of her, you can tell she has difficulties walking. She is also partially blind. So for a cyclist coming charging at you along a pavement, it's a fairly scary thing. And I think if ever there was an argument, and we can't not feel for the family of the dead lady, Celia, but if ever there was an argument to ban cyclists from the pavement, this is it, because this is exactly the kind of people that can get hurt. People who are suffering disabilities, people who are blind, the elderly, mothers with children, they're likely to get hit by people on cycles. And I just don't think cycles should be on a pavement. And say, if ever there was a case where this was going to be, this was going to change the law, this should be it so that it never happens again. This lady should never have gone to jail. The case was thrown out by 3 appeal court judges who said...
So she's been discharged from
she has been... the charge has been dismissed. The appeal judges said it should never have been brought to court in the first place.
When I then put it in front of the jury, they said, look, I actually agree with a lot of what Carol said. In fact, I thought that cycling on the pavement was already illegal. Because I think it's a highway. But look, this is one of my more right-wing opinions, I suppose. I do have I suppose I have a couple of them, perhaps. And one of them is that cycling should be more tightly regulated. I sort of feel that if you are using... Sometimes I see very young kids using the road, and I kind of worry for them because, when I passed my driving test, obviously anyone who's passed a driving test will know that you have to have quite a rigorous knowledge of the highway code, and you have to understand things. And a lot of cyclists simply don't understand, in many cases, that they are also subject to the same rules, that you can't jump a red light, for example, that you have to cycle responsibly, that you can't cycle on the pavement, because I suppose when there's the whole point about the roads is that there's a hierarchy of power.
Right.
When you're in a lorry, you're the king of the food chain. Then you're in a car. Then you're on a bike, and then lastly you're a pedestrian. Then after that, obviously, you might be a vulnerable pedestrian, like Carol was saying. I've been walking on the pavement before, and some kid has sort of whizzed past me and almost hit me on the pavement. And then I remember one cyclist looked back at me as though I was in the wrong because I didn't get out of his way. He shouldn't have been there.
It isn't just kids, is it?
No.
It's people. I see all the guys in the full lycra who think they're professional cyclists, and they too are on the pavement. I'm thinking, if you're a cyclist,
and there's a cycle lane.
Why would you want to be on the pavement if you're a cyclist? Why not on the road? Now, there's an argument that this lady, Celia Ward, who died, she's 77 years old, and maybe she didn't feel safe on the road, but. If that was the case, maybe she shouldn't have been cycling at all.
But the highway code has changed as well, isn't it? So the pedestrian is king. So, for example, even if you're in a car or whatever mode of transport you are on, if you're not on your feet, then you are, as you said, there's a food chain, and the higher you are in the food chain, the less rights you have.
I think
the pedestrian has the most rights.
I think that cyclists should have to have lights. A lot of cyclists don't have lights at night, for example. I don't want to make it. Helmets. I've heard arguments for and against helmets.
There can only be an argument for a helmet.
I personally wouldn't cycle without one. But the point is that I don't want to make life harder for cyclists. I think that cycling's great, and it's obviously great for the environment, great for your health, for your exercise, and so on. But I do think that we need to take into account all kinds of road users, and I think there are going to be more and more cases of pedestrians sort of coming into injury because of cyclists. It's not something we can just ignore.
Pedestrians should feel safe on the pavement. Everyone should feel safe on the pavement.
But I suppose there's just another argument as well, just with this particular story, that the law is so often applied too rigorously, and that we have this obsession almost with applying the law regardless of nuance, regardless of context and circumstances. Clearly, this woman should never have been put in jail. And the judge has said that hostile gesticulation is not an assault.
But calling someone a plonker
Yeah.
Yes.
That might.
Yes. Yes.
I've been called a plonker many times,
They're saying that all these words that we have been using forever, and some of them, lummox. Do you know what a lummox is?
You big lummox, yes.
Yeah,
Not you,
big. But I have been called it before. No, big.
It's like a pillar. Is it being called like a...
Okay. So, but this is going to go barn pot. Do you know what that is?
I've not heard that one.
That's a Scottish word and just means you're an idiot. But the words like blighter, cad, ninny, they're all going to go out of fashion.
My father used blighter all the time.
Blighter?
Yeah, cheeky blighter.
Cheeky
blighter, yeah.
Cheeky blighter.
It's like a Jennings word, isn't it?
Yeah.
The other one that's going to go out of fashion is toe rag. I like toe rag.
Toe rag's a great one. That's
I like
okay. Anyway, I'm going to use that
And
in
it's
the
going out
monologue.
of fashion because young people don't use them?
Because they don't know what they mean. They have no idea. I mean, there was a young girl out here who's been helping us with some research and stuff. She didn't know what they meant, and she was saying the words.
She never heard the word plonker?
She said the word plonker and it sounded weird because she's never used it before, you know?
I use the word pillock and prat all the time.
I like them.
I love them.
Yes.
I love those words. They're so incredibly British and so expressive that you could trying to explain to an American.
Who did you last call a prat?
Probably someone I disagree with on Twitter.
Right.
Andrew.
Really?
Have you ever referred to me as a prat?
I've never disagreed with you before, Andrew.
I think
we've ever agreed.
I think I might have called you a prat. I agree with you politically, but I've still called you a prat.
You called me a lot worse than a prat.
I have,
Yeah, she's called me a lot worse than prat.
We need to hear some of these words in action because I think they sound so good we can't afford to
I don't think we should lose pillock.
No one's cancelling these words, by the way. No one's forcing you not to use them. You can use them if you want to.
If you look at an episode of Blackadder, pillock is used in the Blackadder all the time.
And also,
yeah, but pillock is still great.
Horses. I mean, all these words we've just said are.
Did you say only fools and horses?
Yes.
I think we might have something we can play you for
come.
Let's have a listen.
You stupid little plonker, Rodney. Here I am on the verge of losing the biggest deal of my life, and this plonker here wants to give me a lecture about poxy butterflies.
You know, if you've got a rhinoceros, right, and one day it ain't there, you tend to know it's missing.
Don't be a plonker all your life, Rodney.
See,
fabulous. It's great.
And the one he used a lot was git, which I also quite like.
I don't think you could use that now.
I don't think you could use that.
Can you not?
Why not?
I don't think you'd use it on air.
Sorry.
I don't think you'd use it on air, no.
Some of them have been upgraded to serious words.
So your favourites are prat and...
Pillock, yeah.
Pillock.
Yeah.
And what's yours, Milo?
I like prat and I like pillock, but I also like barn pot too, because that's a Scottish word. But also words like nitwit. Now, I get why that's going out of fashion. If you want to insult somebody, nitwit is not the word you use. You can think of much tougher ones than nitwit.
Nitwit's a schoolboy.
It is, yeah. Drip. I like drip. I think I like... Oh, no, I can't say that. I nearly said that. I couldn't say that.
What's it begin with?
T.
Yeah,
no, you can't say that.
That's been upgraded as well, because that used to be acceptable.
David Cameron had to... Do you remember David Cameron?
That word's always been bad.
And David Cameron had to apologise.
Really?
David Cameron called somebody it. The T word. Yeah. He had to apologise over it when he was Prime Minister.
No, you're thinking of a four-letter word, because I'm not. I'm thinking of a much longer word.
Oh.
Yes, it's got two S's in it as well.
Okay. Oh, you
that
can
one.
say that.
No, you can't. Not on this programme,
I wouldn't argue, otherwise you won't be back, Jonathan.
Yes,
Thank you so much to Carol and
yes,
Jonathan.
don't be a prat, Jonathan.
Let's get your latest headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you. The top stories. The Bank of England will set out its decision on interest rates in the next 30 minutes and is widely expected to leave its base rate unchanged for a sixth time. Most economists expect the Bank of England to wait for firmer evidence that inflation is under control. Leaving the rate at 5.25% would mean a longer period of higher borrowing costs, which have squeezed households amid a cost of living crisis. Both major political parties have made economic growth a key part of their campaign pledges, with Rishi Sunak promising this year would see the economy bouncing back. Commuters are facing a third consecutive day of disruption as the rail industry's longest ever strike action continues. Members of ASLEF at LNER, TransPennine Express and Northern Trains are walking out today. The union claims its members haven't had a pay rise in 5 years and is accusing the government of giving up trying to resolve the issue. But the government says drivers have been offered salaries of up to £65,000, almost twice the UK average. Former Chancellor Nadeem Zahawi has announced he'll step down as an MP at the next election. In a statement posted to social media, Mr Zahawi said that his mistakes were his own, but it had been his greatest honour to serve his constituents. He's been MP for Stratford-on-Avon for 14 years, but he was sacked as Tory party chairman in January last year after an inquiry found he'd failed to disclose that HMRC was investigating his tax affairs. And an 18-month-old girl has had her hearing restored after she became the first person in the world to take part in a new gene therapy trial. Opal Sandy was born deaf due to auditory neuropathy, which disrupts nerve impulses from the inner ear to the brain. Now, thanks to an innovative new treatment being trialled here, Opal's hearing is almost normal and could even improve further. Her parents say they're delighted. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2494 and €1.1639. The price of gold is £1,848.11 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,353 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Well, good morning. If you just joined us, where have you been? It's just coming up to 35 minutes.
Where have they been?
I don't know.
They won't have just
They've
joined
missed
us.
a lot of
They
this.
won't have just joined us. They've been glued from the beginning.
Yeah. They've been glued since 6 a.m. because otherwise they've been very, very lazy and in bed, and we can't be abiding that.
And at 6 a.m. is when we play out the national anthem.
Absolutely.
So
I'm
you can't miss
standing
that.
up every morning.
He's stinking in bed at that time, let's be honest. No, we've got kicking off the show with a big interest rate bank decision.
12 o'clock.
I think we know what's coming, though,
You
don't
think?
we?
Yeah.
Do we?
Rise, fall, stay the same.
It's stayed the same before. The market expects it to stay the same. And again, this is the Bank of England delaying a decision that has to come at some point. But many people have been saying that actually inflation in the UK is lower than it is now in the US, which is remarkable. The real risk of high interest rates now isn't that we'll fail to squeeze out inflation, it's that we're squeezing out economic growth.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? If you keep the interest rates up high like that, a lot of people are struggling in this country.
Haven't got any money, but Liam Halligan is going to be there right outside the Bank of England to deliver the news to us right at the top of the show. We're also going to be talking about the troubles for the Conservative Party, Nadim Zahawi. He's standing down at the next
64.
election.
Yes,
Number 64, which is quite incredible, really. Quite incredible.
Ship, anybody?
So he's only been an MP while the Conservatives have been in power, so he doesn't fancy some time in opposition, perhaps. But this comes as a survey. A new polling shows that Labour are 30.
Well, he doesn't need
points
the money,
ahead.
Though. He's rich, isn't he?
Well, he's a very point. He is perhaps what more MPs should be. He had a career in business before he got into politics. He came to this country as a refugee, barely being able to speak English, and he built a company worth more than £100 million.
YouGov.
And then he decided, you know what, I've done my bit, I've made my money, I'm now going to go into politics, which is, I think, what we should see more of from MPs. Sadly, we're going to see...
All right, Nadim Zahawi fanboy over here.
Look, I think it's a perfectly valid observation. That sometimes too many MPs go straight out of university.
They don't fancy losing, Tom. They don't fancy losing this time around. Also, Rishi Sunak talking to all these university bosses, telling them they need to do something about anti-Semitism. We're going to be asking whether we should start clamping down on these student protests. Could they go the way of the United States?
Well, that's my worry.
Yeah, well, we should get the readout from that meeting during our airtime.
We were just talking earlier to a Jewish student who said he doesn't feel safe when he...
And I can understand the intimidation, the slogans and all of that, a little bit of harassment too. And also, is the countryside boring?
Well, listen, all that and more. Stick around for 12 o'clock midday with Tom and Emily. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the quaint Derbyshire village of Sudbury, there's a storm brewing between the local football club and the National Trust. This grass field might seem unremarkable, but for hundreds of years it's been part of the Sudbury Hall estate, playing host to the village football and cricket matches. Now the National Trust are planning to put an end to that tradition in the name of biodiversity, with plans for trees and plants where the football club play. Some worry it breaks a memorandum of wishes from the late Lord Vernon, whose family have lived here since 1660. Manager of Sudbury FC Tom Crutchley says he's upset at the decision.
Naturally disappointed. We've been here, this is our 9th year. We've put a lot of effort into here to keep playing, to maintain it. I'm from the village originally, so personally it was, it is very upsetting.
MP for Derbyshire Dale Sarah Dines says the National Trust aren't respecting the history of the site.
I feel they're trampling over the wishes of historic owners who gave up this wonderful site for the nation. And for over 100 years, people have played football and cricket here. It's incredibly sad. Incredibly sad, and it's against the wishes of a lot of people locally who've written to me from the village.
Sudbury Hall lives under the branding of the Children's Country House, a decision which Dines says is disrespectful to the history of the estate.
I mean, this is fake to make it into a children's theme park. It's almost a reimagining, and in fact, that's the very words it says on their website. The house is reopened, it's been reimagined. I don't want our heritage to be reimagined. I think the National Trust has been captured by people who have different ideas than most people in this country.
Whilst the public will still be able to roam these historic grounds, the village feels like a legacy is being snatched away. Jack Carson, GB News, Sudbury.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's fast approaching 41 minutes after 11 o'clock. This is Britain's Newsroom. Now, the Citizens' Air Raid Memorial Service have been held in Hull to honour more than 1,200 civilians who died in the war during the World War II.
Hull suffered 82 air raids, making it the second most bombed city in England. During 3 days between the 7th and 9th of May in 1941, more than 400 people were killed. Our Yorkshire reporter Anna Riley has the story.
Hull, the UK's second most bombed city during World War II. It was targeted due to its strategic port. More than 1,200 civilians lost their lives. 95% of Hull's housing was damaged or destroyed. This week, a Citizens' Air Raid Memorial Service paid tribute to those who died.
We have separate celebrations and commemorations for those that fell in service during the military service. So this is more about the residents and the citizens of the whole city that were lost during the war. So it's more importantly for them to remember that we were bombed heavily. There was many civilians, women, children, men, all killed during the Second World War. So it was important for that.
Censorship meant the true extent of the devastation was largely unknown to people outside of Hull until after the war.
It's a massive port and it's on the right side of the country, ready to go across to Europe. So as far as that goes, Hull was a massively important port at that time. The government of the time didn't want Hull to be known as the bombed city, so they were saying a northern city to try and detract from the fact that it was actually Hull that was bombed. They didn't want the Germans to know, I don't think, how badly affected Hull.
German air raids killed 400 people in the Hull Blitz between the 7th and 9th of May in 1941. This service commemorated the 300 men, women and children buried in unmarked graves in the city's northern cemetery.
We're showing respect to those that did die and those that don't have a named grave. So by doing this small service, everybody will know where they are buried, and it's with respect that we do it for them. I think a lot of civilians paid the price because they were doing the dangerous things because the men were away in the war. So they were really looking after the country. You have to remember. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be here today. You know, if the war had gone a different way, it could have been totally different.
We remember before you now those whose lives were lost in the dark days of war from our city and family of Kingston upon Hull.
For the civilians, emergency service workers and armed forces that gave their lives for ours, we will remember them. Anna Riley, GB News, Hull.
So that's
very moving.
Very moving indeed, isn't it?
It is. Now, up next, the chairman of Wetherspoons, Tim Martin, joins us to explain why Guinness has become very fashionable. Cheers. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Not often we've been able to have a headline like this through the spring. It's been fine for a day or so in the south, but now most places joining in thanks to this area of high pressure. Not fine everywhere. There's always one or two exceptions. This weather front is bringing a little more cloud across the far northwest of Scotland through the Western Isles and some patchy rain here. A bit more cloud too over northeastern Scotland and northeast England, staying fairly grey in some places here. But for most, it's dry, fine. Plenty of spring sunshine coming through, lifting those temperatures quite nicely. The coast's a little cooler, particularly where it's a little bit misty, but in the sunny spells, 22, maybe 23 degrees Celsius. That cloud thickening up across northern Scotland, Caithness, Sutherland, and then the Northern Isles, seeing a bit of rain through the evening and overnight, but for most it'll stay dry. We'll see a bit more cloud and mist returning to parts of eastern England. Some fog patches possible across parts of southern England and South Wales as well. Temperatures in rural spots dipping to single figures, but most towns and cities staying in double digits, and most will have a cracking day tomorrow. Yes, could start a little misty, some fog patches, but they should clear fairly sharply. Some patchy rain across Shetland, but even that's on its way out by lunchtime. Some of the coasts, again, a little bit misty at times, particularly in the east, but most places dry, sunny spells and warmer still. Temperatures high teens, low to maybe mid-20s across the southeast.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
And this report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, we're delighted about this because the boss of JD Wetherspoon has credited demand for fashionable Guinness as the pub chain reported a jump in sales.
Now, Guinness has benefited from a boom in demand over recent years, shaking off its association with rugby lads and old men to appeal to a much younger audience and loads more women.
Well, and joining us now is the very said Tim Martin. Tim, morning to you.
Good morning.
We've got our Guinness here.
Oh, yeah.
Cheers to you.
Cheers.
I'm not sure about this boozing on air at this time of the morning, but I'll let you off on this occasion.
As it's you, Tim, as it's you. Now, Guinness is an acquired taste for many people, so I'm surprised it's become so popular.
Yes, it is a real surprise. I think it's always been a popular drink among the demographic you mentioned, the older guy. And I think what the story behind it is about 80 or 90% of pub trade over the last 30 or 40 years, and probably longer, are a similar range of products. But there's a varying 10, 20% according to fashion. So fashion has got a lot to answer for. So you had vodka Red Bull 20 years ago. You had an Irish cider poured over ice, which came from no one knows where. You had Alco Pops. So there's an unpredictable range of products which have been the fashion of the moment. But the fashion of the moment, very unpredictably this time, is Guinness. And no one knows why. As you say, it's an acquired taste. Young people tend not to like it. Most of the fashionable drinks over the decades have been quite sweet, and Guinness obviously isn't. So yes, I think the Guinness brewery, St James's Gate in Dublin, they'll say it's brilliant marketing. But like the rest of us, they rely a bit on luck.
I think it's because it looks good, but not only that, there's supposedly some health benefits, and apparently it's full of iron. I think with this sort of health-obsessed, sort of younger, very sensible, sort of woke generation, if they can drink and be healthy, which I suppose it sort of pictures itself as, then that's quite good. They used to do like a little shamrock on the top when they
did.
used to...
So, Tim, in your pubs, is Guinness now the most popular... do you serve it as a bottle or both?
Only on draft. In the old days, we sold it in a bottle as well. Nowadays, only on draft. And it's almost, if it's not the top seller, it's very close. And in many pubs, it's the top seller. So my old man worked for Guinness for 31 years,
Did he
my
really?
late dad.
Wow.
So he would have been so pleased to have seen this. He worked, because Guinness sells all around the world. And when he was working there, we lived in New Zealand, in Jamaica, in Malaysia, in Ireland. So it's got a world heritage.
Do you teach everybody in your pubs to do the little shamrock when they pour the drink?
That is a bridge too far, but Guinness are very good, actually, as a company for checking on the cellar standards, the pouring standards, and they actually come in and accredit the pubs, and we do pretty well. But Guinness themselves do a very good job on checking their own products, which will have contributed to the success.
And how is things in the pub trade, in the hospitality trade, Tim? We know it was torrid for you all during the lockdown, and it's not even made easier for you with the government whacking tax on alcohol at every budget because they say it's on health grounds, of course. Is it tough at the moment?
I think that it's very, very unpredictable, the circumstances that have happened. First of all, the lockdown, and then people assumed, almost universally, including us probably, that once the lockdown finished, there would be a boom, but there wasn't. And I think what happened is we're all creatures of habit more than we realise, and having been going to the supermarkets for a considerable time, people stayed at home and went to the supermarket. It's recovered now pretty well for us. Our sales are considerably over where they were pre-pandemic, but it's been a hell of a few years.
And how important
it's very tough for a lot of people, even now.
How important is it, Tim, now that pubs have to serve food?
It's possible to get away without selling food. It's not a legal requirement, but it's if you don't sell food, you've obviously got a much narrower market.
Yeah.
And food now for us is nearly 40% of sales.
Wow.
30 years ago, it was 5%.
Wow, it's quite something. Listen, Tim, lovely to talk to you. That's Tim Martin. He's the chairman of JD Wetherspoons.
Here's to you, Tim.
And cheers, Tim.
And we're going to enjoy it. Lovely to talk to you, Tim Wetherspoons. Great man. I like his pubs.
I just wish you could put music in the pubs. If they could just have music, then I would love them more.
They do great breakfasts,
They
Wetherspoon
do.
pubs.
And very reasonable price, I've got to say. But that's obviously no advert for them, but that's just a fact.
Yeah.
But listen, thank you so much, Andrew, for having me today. It's been a
Well, I
pleasure.
think we're going to be together on Monday, aren't we?
I'm looking forward to that.
And you're going to be back on Patrick's show on Friday?
Yes, Patrick's show on Friday.
We can't get enough of Nana Aquia, can we?
But up next, in Good Afternoon Britain, it's Tom and Emily.
Nana, if you want music in a Wetherspoons, go to the Regal in Cambridge. There's a light-up dance floor and music in the evenings. It's marvellous. Coming up on the show, we will be talking about how the Prime Minister is meeting with university heads about anti-Semitism on campuses.
And we'll be live right outside the Bank of England to see whether borrowing costs are going to rise or fall. You won't want to miss it. Stick with us after the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There is a bit of mist and fog around first thing this morning, but otherwise it's going to be a fine day for many of us. Away from the far north-northwest, that is. Here there is quite a bit of cloud and there will be some outbreaks of drizzly rain through much of the day, but elsewhere across the bulk of the country, plenty of fine sunny weather around. Lots of blue skies, and in that sunshine it is going to feel pretty warm. Temperatures up a little bit compared to yesterday. There's a good chance that we're going to see highs of around 23, possibly 24 Celsius towards the southeast, and even further north, despite the slightly cloudier skies, temperatures getting into the high teens quite easily. Little change as we go through this evening and overnight, sticking with the thicker cloud and some drizzly rain across far northern parts and a few spots elsewhere across parts of Scotland. Otherwise, lots of areas having a dry and at times clear night, so once more we will see a few pockets of mist and fog developing. It won't be a particularly chilly start to the day tomorrow. Lots of places, particularly in the towns and cities, holding up in double figures. Again, any mist and fog patches will relatively quickly burn back as we go through tomorrow morning, and then once more another fine picture across the bulk of the country. Still a little bit of drizzly rain, perhaps for Orkney and Shetland, but really for many northern central parts of Scotland it's going to be drier and brighter than today. Again, temperatures climbing a little bit further, so for many it may even feel a bit warmer than today. Once more, I'll see you again soon.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. But you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.